Chapter 161. Jiang Pengji stopped talking after being yelled at. She looked at Meng Liang coldly as he continued to court death. Everyone in Meng County fawned over him. Even in a gambling house, the boss would treat him well. That was why he won a lot of money every time he went there. As time went by, Meng Liang had the illusion that he was the king of the gambling table. Now he was in trouble. This was Hejin County, not Meng County, Tsang Prefecture. Not everyone was fawning over him. Nongqin held the gold in her arms tightly. Her face turned pale when she heard the number. Lang Jun, if they continued to lose, she and her Lang Jun would not be able to leave. Who asked the three of them to come together? It's a trap. There's no hurry. Jiang Pengji sneered. How could she not know what the gambling house was planning? Or rather, it was the result of her deliberate manipulation. But what was the connection between Meng Liang's losing and her winning? Meng Liang was the legitimate son of the Mengs. He had the best food and clothes. Plus, his real mother was Meng Zhan's concubine. She was secretly in charge of the inner house. What could he not have? The amount of money he made every month was terrifying. On the gambling table, the smallest bet was in the hundreds. Sometimes, when he played big, it was possible to bet more than 1,000. However, no one dared to win against him. Even if they did, it would be pointless. Meng Liang would just bring his servants to his doorstep. He was a jinx. This time, he bet another 1,000 taels of silver. Jiang Pengji smiled coldly, but the dealer smiled like a fox. Lang Jun, you've already bet a few thousand taels. We're a small business. If you can't pay us back after gambling, we'll lose a lot. The dealer played hard to get. It seemed like he did not want Meng Liang to continue gambling, but his words hinted at something else. Meng Liang almost laughed. How could he not have the money? Who did he think he was? Why are you talking so much nonsense? You're just a snob. Do you think I'll lose out on such a small amount of silver? He slammed the table. If it were not for his expensive clothes and good looks, he would look like a gangster. After being scolded, the dealer didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled and shrugged. Of course. I can tell that you have an extraordinary background when I look at you, but how can that compare to real gold and silver? We haven't even seen a single strand of silver here. If you win, we'll have to give you real silver. Meng Liang was so angry that he wanted to tear this person's mouth apart. If he was still in Meng County, who would dare to treat him like this? What a snob. But as angry as he was, Meng Liang did not have any money with him. Thinking about this, he became even angrier. When the dealer saw that Meng Liang still hadn't taken out the money, he couldn't help but snort coldly. If you don't have money, you pretend to be rich and come here to gamble. This was a gambling den, not a charity hall. It was only right and proper to pay one's debts. Hurry up and return the money. Get lost. If you don't have money, just say it. Don't be unreasonable with me. After saying that, a few strong men dressed in coarse hemp clothes surrounded him. At that moment, Meng Liang was already irritated by the dealer's words. The frustration from his previous consecutive losses had been squeezed to the limit. Now, he was being mocked by an ant that he had never looked down upon. How could the proud and spoiled Meng Liang tolerate this? How dare an ant that he had killed so casually treat him like this? They must be tired of living. Meng Liang was not someone who could tolerate easily. At that moment, Jiang Pengji guessed that the time was right. She stepped forward to stop him, but it was actually adding fuel to the fire. She seemed to be in a difficult position. She said with a hint of charity, "Cousin, don't bother with these commoners. I still have some silver here." Meng Liang's eyes were red. He glared at her as if she was his murderer and pushed her away. "Do you know who I am? Lowly commoner, I dare you to touch a single hair on my head." Meng Liang had been provoked in many ways. His eyes were filled with anger. How could he still be rational? Hearing his arrogant words, the dealer snorted coldly and mocked him. I don't care if you are a dragon or a tiger. Since you are here, you must follow the rules. How dare you be rude when you don't have the money? Meng Liang shouted at the thugs who were trying to surround him. Get out of my way, lowly commoner. I am the descendant of Lord Meng. How dare you touch me? Meng Liang raised his hand and swatted away one of the thug's hands. His snow-white face was already flushed with anger. It was no wonder he was furious to be treated like that by a lowly commoner. Meng Zhan is my father. Fine. Jiang Pengji, who was watching from the side, curled her lips into a smile. Meng Liang had finally said the two most important words. Who is Meng Zhan? I have never heard of him. The dealer sneered and pointed at Meng Liang's nose. How dare you call yourself the descendant of Lord Meng? Will Lord Meng's descendant be like you? You can't even afford to gamble. How dare you call yourself the descendant of Lord Meng? Arrest him. Nongqin's face turned pale. The thugs not only wanted to detain Meng Liang, but also her and her Lang Jun. Clang. Before Nongqin could come to her senses, one of the thugs who had reached out to her suddenly flew out as if he had been hit by a heavy punch. He hit a nearby gambling table and the betting money fell to the ground with a crisp sound. This turn of events scared everyone so much that they didn't come back to their senses. What happened? Jiang Pengji retracted her foot and smiled wickedly. Don't. My servant is young and timid. Don't bully him. That kick was from her. It was so fast that no one could react. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Jiang Pengji took out a long fan from her sleeve and slapped one of the thugs in the face. His face was bleeding, and it hurt to look at. Meng Liang seemed to have just regained his composure, but he was not willing to run away like that. You unruly commoners. If you dare to fight again, I will ask the Meng army to chop you into human jerky. Everyone was confused by Jiang Pengji's sudden attack, but Meng Liang, their stupid teammate, kept provoking their anger. They were so angry that they couldn't care less if the three were the sons of the gentry. They just wanted to lock them up and talk about their next course of action. Jiang Pengji was at ease. Even though Nongqin was dragging her down, she could still walk as if she was taking a stroll in the park. However, due to her costume, she could not move her lower body too much. She had to rely on the strength of her hands. Jiang Pengji, who had undergone special training, knew the structure of the human body better than she did. She could easily dislocate the joints of the opponents. The gamblers on the first floor saw that something was wrong. They immediately stuffed the betting money into their pockets and planned to sneak away while the situation was still chaotic. The other gamblers had the same idea, and the scene became even more chaotic. Jiang Pengji protected Nongqin, but she was not as nice to Meng Liang. Meng Liang was so frightened by the scene that he came back to his senses. His cheeks were pale, and he looked like a mess. Chapter 162. She said, "This won't do. I'm afraid none of us will be able to escape. I'll distract some of them. Take care, cousin." Meng Liang was furious as he ran. I think you're using me as bait, aren't you? Jiang Pengji smiled and said, Cousin Meng Liang has been stupid for so long. I didn't expect him to be smart for once before he died. What? Meng Liang was shocked. The three of them had run into a dark alley, and there was a pungent smell in the air. Just as he realized something was wrong, Jiang Pengji raised her hand and hit the back of his neck. Along with the pain, Meng Liang's vision was instantly shrouded in darkness. His consciousness quickly became hazy. Before he completely lost consciousness, he vaguely felt a sharp pain in his throat. His body involuntarily twitched twice. Nongqin was shocked speechless, but the person who hit him did not seem to be scared. Lang Jun, don't worry about him. Nongqin saw Jiang Pengji throw the unconscious Meng Liang on the ground like a piece of trash, and she was at a loss of what to do. Even though she did not like Meng Liang, he was still an important guest. If anything happened to him, there would be trouble. Who cares? Let's just run. Hold on to the gold in your arms. 10% of it will be your betrothal gift for your future husband. What? Nongqin was confused. Jiang Pengji smiled indifferently. She was annoyed that Nongqin was running too slowly, so she simply grabbed her hand and carried her up. Nongqin was screaming in surprise. Jiang Pengji put one hand on her shoulder and the other on her calf. Even though Nongqin was not fat, she still weighed more than 90 kilograms. She leaped onto the wall of the alley, and with a few leaps, Jiang Pengji jumped into the deep alley nearby. Done. Jiang Pengji put down Nongqin, who was still in a daze. There was a hint of laughter in her voice, as if she had let go of all the pent-up frustration in her heart. She had planned to tease Meng Liang a little longer, but now? Hee, she changed her mind at the last minute. When Nongqin landed on the ground, she finally recovered from the dizzy state. She tilted her head and took a closer look. She could faintly see the outline of her Langjuan's face in the dark. He had run for a long distance with her in his arms, but his forehead was still fresh and his breathing was steady. Nongqin felt a little ashamed in her heart. She had been doing rough work since she was a child. She could eat a lot and was strong, but she could not compare with her pampered Langjun. Langjun. Will Madame blame you for leaving Miss Biao behind? If he spouts any nonsense, the gamblers will come to the Lu mansion. Then. Nongqin's face turned pale. Jiang Pengji snorted coldly. Isn't our Lady Biao by my side? As for whether or not Meng Liang will talk nonsense, don't worry, he can't speak or write for the time being. Be a good boy and wait at the gambling house. She had many tricks up her sleeves. She could temporarily paralyze a person's arm or make them unable to speak or write. It was very simple. How could Meng Liang compete with her? She could toy with that brat to death even with her eyes closed. Right by her side? Nongqin could not help but look around. There were only the two of them. Where was the third person? Was there a third person? Suddenly, she felt the air around her was a little cold. A creepy feeling rushed from the soles of her feet to her brain. Let's go buy some women's clothing. You can wear it and temporarily play the role of Lady Biao, Jiang Pengji said. Nongqin finally realized what Jiang Pengji meant. She wanted her to pretend to be Lady Biao? But won't my identity be exposed? Many people have already seen the appearance of young Miss Cousin. Nongqin felt it was tricky, but it was her Langjuan's request. She had to comply. However, it seemed that even the heavens were against Jiang Pengji. Just when she felt a little better, the system beeped. System, beginning self-examination. Scanning mission. Beep. Scan successful. Mission established. Meng Liang, son of Meng Zhan, chief of Meng County in Sang Prefecture, is in danger. Please save him in 2 hours. When the mission is completed, the host will receive the reward of Willow's slender waist. If the mission fails, the host will receive a level 5 electric shock as punishment. Jiang Pengji's face froze, and then a bloodthirsty smile appeared on her face. System, are you asking for a beating? The system explained frantically, its voice sounding panicked and helpless. No, host. Listen to me. After the real-time mission is loaded, it will be automatically assigned to the host based on what you encounter. It will be automatically assigned. But you have to believe that completing the mission will only benefit you. This is carefully calculated, and it will not harm the host's interests. I've looked at the back-end data. Killing Meng Liang will cause you great losses. What are you talking about? If you can understand me, then shut up. Jiang Pengji was furious. She was already annoyed by the system, and now she felt even more disgusted. The system lost its temper when Jiang Pengji yelled at it. Host, although I am your system, I hope you can respect me. We need to support each other, not drag each other down. The calculation of the human brain will never be as good as the optical computer system. After analysis, we concluded that saving Meng Liang is the best choice. Jiang Pengji snorted. I said, shut up. The system was frustrated by her stubbornness, but there was nothing it could do. If you don't carry out the mission, you will receive a 2-hour countdown. When the time is up, you will automatically fail the mission. Do you understand? If you fail the mission, you will be punished with a level 5 electric shock. That will cost you your life. Then I'll just die. Jiang Pengji's words pushed back the system's attempts to dissuade her. At that moment, Meng Liang, who had fainted on the ground, was captured and tied up. Have you found the other two? The one who won a lot of money ran away, while the one who lost to the casino and owed a lot of money was caught. What was going on? The owner of the casino was so angry that his face contorted into a dark purple hue. The few hired thugs of the gambling house were trembling with fear like quails. They had already tried their best to chase after them, but not only were the two slippery fellows slippery, they seemed to have vanished into thin air without a trace. Not to mention people, they didn't even catch a single strand of hair. They really couldn't understand. That alley was clearly a dead end, so how did the two of them escape? Chapter 163. The thug was furious, but he didn't dare to say anything. The casino had been making dirty money in Hejin County for years. He was the one who manipulated the gamblers and forced many families to separate. How many gamblers lost their fortune and lost their composure? How many wives and daughters of the gamblers were sold into prostitution? It could be said that the establishment and operation of the casino were built with the blood and tears of the gamblers' families. Every coin and every cent was stained with blood. It was not clean at all. Unexpectedly, the boss of the casino was blinded by the eagle's peck. He was tricked by a young boy. That was more than 4,000 taels of silver. Ordinary people couldn't make that much money in a few lifetimes. In the face of the furious boss, there was finally a bold person who bit the bullet and asked, "Boss, what should we do with the one who got caught? Lock him up in the woodshed. Do you want him to be treated like the god of fortune?" The boss was so angry that he wanted to stomp on Meng Liang's head, but he restrained himself. Somewhere else, Jiang Pengji took Nongqin to buy a set of women's clothing. Then she put on a thick bamboo hat to cover her face. "Lang Jun, is this okay?" Nongqin had never worn such fine clothes in her life. She was so excited that she didn't know what to say. She blushed and lowered her head. She didn't dare to look up at others. "It's a little short, but it's the only ready-made clothes that fit. It's okay." In ancient times, there was no such thing as a ready-made clothing store. Most families would have their women go out to the streets to buy suitable materials and sew them into clothes. Some families would even grow their own raw materials and slowly turn them into cloth. After dyeing them, they would then make clothes. Even so, there were some places where ready-made clothes could be bought, such as the large-scale cloth stores. The cloth stores sold cloth, but they could also customize the clothes. Sometimes, in order to give customers a more intuitive introduction, they would make some ready-made clothes and display them in the shop. The clothes could also be sold, but that was not the main business of the cloth store. Jiang Pengji took Nongqin around the clothing store and bought a set of fine, high-quality clothes that fit her figure. He asked Nongqin to put on the bamboo hat and bought 2 bolts of good material for inner clothes for Xuemei Takshu. Jiang Pengji didn't want to be special. Nongqin bought the clothes because of special circumstances, not because she was biased. But for the sake of fairness, she couldn't ignore the other 2 maids in the yard. If he gave them other materials, even if they were made into clothes, they wouldn't be able to wear them. It would be better to buy the material used to make undergarments, which would be more comfortable to wear. "Let's go," Jiang Pengji said. Nongqin nodded and pulled the white veil over the bamboo hat to prevent her face from being exposed. The system trembled as it spoke. "Host. Are you really not going to consider it?" Jiang Pengji had calmed down from her previous anger. She asked seriously, "Can you uninstall the real-time mission board after it's loaded?" Don't give me these messy tasks, because even if you give them to me, I won't do them. The system said bitterly, I'm sorry, host. The loading board can only be uninstalled after the next major upgrade. In other words, before you level up for the second time, will these quests continue to be issued out of nowhere? The system carefully looked at her face to make sure she didn't have any intention of scolding her. Then, it spoke shakily. Not constantly. According to the manual of the board, the real-time missions are issued in a regular pattern. For example, if the host encounters something important, the board will calculate the best outcome and route, and then issue the mission. The host will receive a certain reward after completing the mission. If the host doesn't complete the mission or fails the mission, the reward will be exchanged for the corresponding energy value as a punishment. Jiang Pengji was silent for a while. When the system thought she was ignoring it, she asked a question. System, tell me clearly once again, what kind of system are you? I want to know your full name. The system was puzzled. That question was nonsense, wasn't it? But considering the host's temperament, it felt that if it didn't answer, it would probably be scolded again. So, it honestly said, the full name is Multidimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. Yes, you're the Multidimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. The loading of the real-time mission board is also to serve the main plot. This can be seen from the mission reward, Willow Slender Waist, Slender and Enchanting. Hee hee. Is that useful? Of course, men like slender waists, and having a willow slender waist can indeed make men linger on you for a second longer, but... Jiang Pengji's voice was very calm, but it was this calmness that made the system's scalp tingle. I want to kill all my enemies and become the emperor, not sleep with all the men and let them help me ascend the throne. Becoming the emperor and becoming the emperor's woman, how could the two be the same? So, now, system, you can shut up. The system didn't dare to make a sound. Jiang Pengji didn't have such a strong desire to cause trouble in the beginning. It was completely forced by the stupid system and the culture of this even more stupid era. She didn't want to be changed, so she could only think of ways to change others. As for the 5th level electric shock punishment that the system mentioned? Did it really think that the Federation's training methods were child's play? 90% of the so-called 5th level electric shock punishment was a threat. She knew what the other 10% was. Because she knew it, she was not afraid. It was still the same thing. Playing tricks with her? She could play with it with her eyes closed. Intelligence was a real weakness, and it couldn't be changed by leveling up. But a 5th level electric shock punishment? Jiang Pengji's eyes flickered, and the corners of her lips curled up. This was a good opportunity. There were many training courses for genetic warriors, but the core of it was to stimulate the muscles with external force. The system's punishment couldn't really use electricity. After all, the human body was different. It was most likely to use some kind of energy to stimulate the nerves and muscles of the body to achieve the same punishment as a 5th level electric shock. If that was the case, it would be a good training opportunity. Jiang Pengji brought Nongqin back to the Luz and sent her to the outer courtyard where Meng Liang lived. Stay here for a few days. You can go back to normal after the storm blows over. Nongqin nodded. At that moment, there was a voice coming closer. Lang Jun, you're finally back. If you didn't come back, would have gone out to look for you. The person stopped abruptly and stared at Nongqin and Jiang Pengji. It was Meng Liang's servant who thought that his Lang Jun was back. Seeing the servant running over, Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled. Chapter 164. Meng Liang's servant was smarter than his master. Or rather, he was more perceptive. He could feel that danger was approaching. He was like a croaking frog that had been targeted by a poisonous snake. His life and death could be decided in an instant. The manservant tried his best to suppress the creepy feeling. He stopped in his tracks and bowed to Jiang Pengji. He bit the bullet and asked, "Do you know where my wife is?" Jiang Pengji laughed softly. Her mellow voice was different from that of a young man. It sounded more like it came from her throat. It sounded mellow. She said darkly, "Do you want to know where your Lang Jun went? If you're so curious, why don't you go to hell and ask him?" After the manservant heard this, he instantly shivered. His hands and feet turned cold, and the fear in his heart exploded in an instant. He was so scared that his legs went soft, and he directly knelt down in front of her feet. His knees happened to press on a few protruding stones, and immediately a bruise appeared. His thin lips trembled. He couldn't say a word. After a long time, he took a deep breath. He said dryly, "Please don't joke around. My wife was fine." As he spoke, he slowly got up and secretly took a few steps back. The grudge between the Lus and the Mengs was irreconcilable. It was not impossible for Lu Shi to kill someone. The manservant was so anxious that his eyes turned red. "Why would I joke around? Since the villain dies because he talks too much, I'll let you die with regrets." Jiang Pengji took a step forward. The manservant froze. He quickly turned around and tried to run into the house. Nongqin was anxious. She wanted to catch the manservant when she saw him trying to escape. But someone was faster than her. As if there was a gust of black wind, Jiang Pengji had already caught up with the servant who was trying to escape. She pinched the servant's slender neck with one hand and gradually exerted force with her 5 fingers. The servant felt that it was getting more and more difficult for him to breathe. He tried his best to pry her hand away with both of his hands. His feet rubbed against the ground. At first, he struggled intensely, but as time went by, the intensity gradually decreased. Sha 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 sha, his legs, which were rubbing against the ground, went completely limp. His hands were still holding onto Jiang Pengji's wrists. His eyes were wide open, bulging so much that it seemed like they were about to jump out of their sockets and explode in the next second. His face had slowly turned from dark purple to green. Nongqin saw the servant struggling hard before he died. His eyes were almost popping out of his eye sockets. She was so nervous that her breath quickened. She felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar, as if the night wind around her was strangely cold. "Are you scared?" Nongqin stood rooted to the ground and heard Jiang Pengji's gentle question. She took a deep breath, and the trembling in her chest calmed down under the stimulation of the cold air. She bit the tip of her tongue and regained her senses. Her eyes were shining with determination. "Lang Jun, I'm afraid now, but I won't be afraid in the future. All right, go call the butler over and have him dispose of the corpse. For the next few days, I will assign a few maids to you. Remember to take a few steps in front of people occasionally. Miss Biao, who came to the Lus 2 days ago, has never stepped out of this yard. Do you understand?" Nongqin nodded hard, as if she was trying to overcome the spreading fear in her heart. She thought the butler would panic when he saw the corpse, but she didn't expect him to be so calm. "His neck is twisted like this. How much strength did he use to hurt him?" The old butler guessed something from Nongqin's vague and mysterious description, so he came over with 2 confidants. With the light from the match, he saw the servant's completely twisted and sunken neck. He clicked his tongue. Nongqin was nervous. "Butler, this. Lang Jun heard a strange noise when he sent me here. I came over and saw this corpse. I don't know who did it. Someone suddenly died in the yard. What should we do?" The old butler snorted and waved his hand. The 2 confidants had already put the corpse into a black cloth bag. "We can't send him out secretly. Just throw him into the bucket of night incense, so that others won't see it and misunderstand." Asking people to move the corpse out secretly was the stupidest thing to do. It was no different from burying one's head. The people living near the Lus were not ordinary people. No matter which door the corpse was moved out, it was impossible to guarantee that no one would see it. The old butler was experienced. He put the body in the bucket of night incense and sent it out. Who would be so bored to check it? Nongqin was a little scared, but seeing the old butler so calm, she felt a strange admiration and envy. It was not the first time the system saw Jiang Pengji kill someone, but none of the previous scenes were as shocking as this one. She killed the bandits in the village quickly and neatly. Almost all of them died in an instant, but she strangled the servant to death with her own hands. Her strength was so great that she directly crushed the neck bone. The system held back for a long time and asked without confidence, "How could you kill such a weak ordinary person?" Jiang Pengji said coldly, "I killed him to show you." The system was speechless. "When did I ever tell you that I won't kill people who don't even have the strength to truss a chicken?" That servant was as weak as a chicken, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have the ability to do evil. There were more than 20 people who died directly or indirectly in his hands. More importantly, if he is alive, it will have an uncontrollable impact on the ending. So it's better to nip the risk in the bud. The system asked her in a low voice, "Okay, I don't care about that. But, what do you mean by killing him to show me? I don't know what your previous host was like, but I know one thing. Don't treat me like a clay figurine. System, you have done more than one thing to disgust me. I hope there won't be another mission like today." The system was speechless. As I said, this kind of real-time mission is issued randomly and automatically. I can't control it. If you don't want to do it, just say no. Anyway, if you don't want to do the mission, how can I force you? Hearing the system's words, Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled. Her smile was full of inexplicable meaning. The system added, "But if you fail the mission, you will also have to bear the punishment. Don't blame me for not reminding you if you can't bear it." At that time, 2 hours had passed since Jiang Pengji refused to do the mission. Chapter 165. Jiang Pengji listened coldly to the system's countdown, but her mood was not affected at all. "Xuanmei, if you hear anything tonight, don't come in to investigate." Xuanmei sat outside the door, a neatly folded mattress beside her. The mattress was used by the maids to keep warm during the night. Xuanmei was surprised to hear Jiang Pengji's instructions, but she still agreed. "Yes. Don't worry, Lang Jun." "Okay." Jiang Pengji replied softly. The system was humane enough to give Jiang Pengji 3 minutes to prepare. Jiang Pengji unhurriedly took off her outer garment, leaving only her moon-white inner garment. She sat on the mattress and calmly waited for the system's punishment. 3, 2, 1. Punishment commencing. As the system's cold countdown ended, in that instant, a strange and explosive energy instantly enveloped his entire body. From the surface of his skin, it fiercely flowed throughout his body like a hot knife through butter. Every muscle in his body seemed to have been violently crushed by something. Jiang Pengji was forced to bend over from the pain. She lay on the mattress, making only a slight sound. As the explosive energy spread, her heart beat at an unimaginable speed, as if it was about to jump out of her throat. Her blood flowed faster, and hot sweat flowed out of her pores. In less than 2 or 3 breaths, the place where she was lying actually became damp. The sweat on her back and shoulder blades had already soaked her clothes, and the excess sweat slid down her skin and dripped onto the bed. To be honest, the system's punishment was not on the same level as Jiang Pengji's previous training. In terms of cruelty, the system's punishment was at the most ordinary level, while the Federation's training was at the hellish level. Comparing the two, Jiang Pengji would rather go through the Federation's training once more. She had been careless and overestimated herself. She had forgotten that this body belonged to an ancient woman. Without any specific training, the ancient woman's performance in all aspects could only be described as low, let alone compared to her previous self. Lu Lanting's body would collapse under the same pain, but Jiang Pengji's previous body would not be affected. Even though Lu Lanting's body had an additional 31 points of fusion force, it was only enough to upgrade the body from a weakling to a burly man. In the end, it was still a normal person. In terms of numbers, it was not even comparable to a genetic warrior. Under such circumstances, Jiang Pengji was faced with a very awkward situation. His spirit and will were strong enough, but his body had already reached the limit of collapse. Her face was slightly twisted because of the pain, but the corners of her lips curled up into a twisted and strange smile, with a hint of mockery. Although she didn't know how the system graded the pain of the electric shock, after experiencing it herself, she was very clear about one thing: the so-called level 5 electric shock just happened to be the limit of this body's endurance. If it was just a little bit heavier, the body would collapse first and die. From the start of the punishment, the system had entered a state of indifference as a bystander, coldly watching as she accepted the punishment, waiting for her to give in and beg for mercy. Wasn't it good for the system and the host to mutually benefit each other? Why was he so violent and uncooperative? Wasn't this harming the interests of both parties? As a system, it was very certain of Jiang Pengji's ability. If it ignored her bad temper, it could not find any fault with her. For a system, especially one that had a clear purpose to nurture, a stupid host was indeed easy to control, but it was also tiring to bring them along. Not only did he have to be a father and a mother, he had to calculate every step for them, just like a nanny or a wet nurse. Therefore, basically every system yearned to meet a host that was smart, motivated, and easy to control. However, Jiang Pengji did not fall into either category. She was smart and motivated, but her only fatal flaw was that she had a strong sense of self and would not allow herself to be controlled by others. A host that refused to follow the system's orders was more annoying than those who were too lazy to use their brains. At that moment, Lu Lanting's body was already on the verge of collapse. If not for Jiang Pengji's strong will, it would have been useless. She secretly told herself, "Hang in there, Jiang Pengji." The genetic warrior training method developed by the Federation essentially used external forces to stimulate the activity of muscle cells. Although this strange energy had caused her to suffer greatly, after she had endured it, the benefits would be huge. The system would not let her die. If she did, the system would suffer a great loss. However, not letting her die and not letting her suffer were two completely different concepts. She knew very well that the system was using this punishment as a warning. If she did not want to suffer anymore, she had to complete the system's mission obediently. Haha. That was unfortunate. Jiang Pengji was a tough bone that no one could bite. Who would dare to bite? Be careful, or you might break a mouthful of teeth. The system watched coldly from the side. It did not seem anxious at all. Lu Shi's body data was being monitored in real time. He was only at the 0 point. It was fine as long as he was still alive. 3 minutes was not a long time, but for Jiang Pengji, every second felt like a year. 1 minute ago, Lu Shi's body data was in a scary red color, which meant that his body was on high alert. 1 minute later, the system was still not anxious, but it did not notice that the red color of the data had faded. By the time it realized something was wrong, the color of the data had turned orange-red. It was still high risk, but the alert level was lower than the red. What had happened? The system was confused. In less than half a minute, the orange-red color slowly turned orange-yellow, and the alert level was lowered again. Before the system could figure out what had happened, the punishment that lasted for 3 minutes was over. Jiang Pengji lay on the bed with her limbs spread out. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She used her mouth and nose to greedily breathe in fresh air to relieve the pain in her body. 3 minutes have passed. Jiang Pengji's voice became extremely hoarse. It was as harsh as sandpaper rubbing against glass. The system softly responded. 3 minutes, it's really a pity it's too short, she laughed, and her voice sounded strange and cynical. The system thought that Jiang Pengji was mocking it, so it could not help but say, "The real-time mission is issued automatically. I did not intentionally give it to the host. The time, frequency, and even the content of the mission are not within the system's control." The host's sarcasm will greatly affect the enthusiasm of the system, which will have a huge impact on our cooperation. Jiang Pengji was extremely tired, but there was a bright smile on her face. "No, system, that's not what I meant." Jiang Pengji laughed so hard that she almost could not finish her sentence. "Then what do you mean?" the system asked. Chapter 166. The system was dumbfounded. It immediately opened Lu Shi's data panel. Jiang Pengji licked her dry lips and said, "It's only been 3 minutes. TSK, I'm not satisfied yet." Thus, what the system saw was this data panel. Name, Jiang Pengji, Lu Shi, Lanting, also known as Lu Lanting. Base strength, 12, strength fusion plus 39, gender, female, disguised as a man. Replaced her deceased brother, Lu Lanting, age, 41, 12, born in the 3rd year of Tianwu's flower festival birth, the 2nd son of the Lu family in Hejin County. Fiancé, Wei Jingxian, the 2nd daughter of the Wei family in Hejin County. Specialties, 6 arts of rites, beginner, combat, expert, analysis, expert, other abilities, temporary, attributes, charm, hidden 33, appearance, 75, channel, streaming, activated, host level 2. Compared to the initial data, Jiang Pengji's hidden charm value had unknowingly increased to 33 points. Her appearance value did not change. The streamer's level had risen to level 2 because of the upgrade card, but that was not the main point. The main point was the integration of force. Strength fusion plus 39. When Jiang Pengji first arrived in this world, her strength fusion was 30 points. She continued to use points, but it only increased by 1 point. Before the system's punishment, her strength fusion was 31 points. But now? 39. That was not all. Her unshakable base strength of 5 points had increased to 12 points. Strength fusion was a combination of her previous life strength and brought it to this world. It was a cheat, but the base strength was the body's own strength. An increase in the base strength meant that all aspects of the body had improved. That was why Jiang Pengji regretfully said that 3 minutes was too short. System. Jiang Pengji called out to the system in the quiet room. "Speak. What's the matter?" She smiled wickedly and supported her face with her hand. "When will the next real-time mission be issued?" The system was like gunpowder whose fuse had been ignited, instantly exploding. Jiang Peng Ji. The system spat out word by word, gritting its teeth. "That's enough." Jiang Pengji said righteously, "No, this is only the first time." "How can that be?" Come at me if you can." Everyone was hurting each other. The last time he had fused with his martial power, his body had been exhausted to the extreme. However, the genetic warrior training this time felt completely different. There was still a faint pain in his limbs, but he felt an indescribable sense of comfort from the inside out. His mind was also very clear. She missed it. Jiang Pengji wiped the sweat off her face and took off her inner clothes. She rolled them into a ball and wiped the sweat off her skin. Then, she put on the clean inner clothes and left the dirty ones on the clothes rack for the maids to clean up the next day. "Xuanmei." Jiang Pengji adjusted her voice and tried to return it to normal. But when she listened carefully, it was still deeper and hoarser than usual. Outside the door, Xuanmei said respectfully, "Lang Jun, please give me your orders. Go and prepare some hot soup. I want to take a bath. Remember to brew another pot of hot tea and change the bedding on the bed." Her whole body was covered in sweat, and her wet inner clothes stuck to her skin. If not for the charcoal brazier in the room, she would have shivered when the cold wind blew. Xuanmei said, "Yes." After that, she heard some rustling sounds. Xuanmei must have lifted the soft blanket and got up to get someone to prepare the bath. Jiang Pengji soaked her whole body in the bathtub. She tied her long hair into a bun and fixed it with a hairpin. Takshu did not work that night, so Xuanmei was the one who helped Jiang Pengji bathe. "I went out today and brought some toys for you and Takshu. I'll have someone send them to you tomorrow." Although the rules in the manor are strict, there is still room for flexibility. "I know that girls like to dress up, so it's okay to embellish them a little." Xuanmei smiled gently. "Lang Jun, that's very kind of you." After that, Xuanmei became a little absent-minded. She looked at Jiang Pengji with struggle and awkwardness. If you have something to say, say it. Don't keep it to yourself, she said. Xuanmei secretly bit her lips and said shyly, why haven't I seen the boy servant by your side these days? Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. She did not expect that Xuanmei still had not figured it out after so many days. Su Ku was not a man that Xuanmei could win over. They were not compatible. If they were forced to be together, it would only add to the resentment. She could force Su Ku to get close to Xuanmei, but what was the point? Anyway, Jiang Pengji would not do that. If Xuanmei had the ability, she could pursue him herself. If she succeeded and Su Ku was willing, she would be the matchmaker. Su Ku was sent out to do something else. He is not staying in the manor for now. Xuanmei was too embarrassed to continue asking after that answer. Her expression was a little more awkward than before. The next day, Jiang Pengji woke up feeling refreshed. She meditated for a while. Her 5 senses were much better than before. After breakfast, the servant reported that Qiguan Rang was visiting. What a rare guest. Jiang Pengji smiled and teased him. I thought that Mr. Wei would not come. According to Wenjing's temperament, he would not take the initiative to visit. Qiguan Rang was born in a poor family. Because he was of mixed blood, it was easy for others to despise him and curse him as a bastard. To reduce such humiliation, under normal circumstances, he would not take the initiative to visit his friends from the gentry clan to avoid attracting criticism. But at that moment, he was not in the mood to respond to Jiang Pengji's teasing. As soon as he sat down, the first thing he said was, why did you act so impatiently? Jiang Pengji was not surprised at all. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Last night was a good opportunity. Not only could I get the Lu Manor out of this, but I could also trick Meng Liang. I also made a small fortune. Jiang Pengji smiled and her eyes curved. I guess what happened last night has spread far and wide. According to Meng Hun's ability, they will know about Meng Liang by the afternoon. Do you think we should wait for him tonight? Wait for him? Who was the rabbit? Needless to say, it was Meng Hun. How can you be sure it's tonight? Qiguan Rang asked. Jiang Pengji said, if not tonight, should we wait for a few days? Don't forget that when Meng Liang left Sung Prefecture, he brought his entourage with him. If he did not think he was smart and dump his entourage, he would not be in this situation. Now the gambling house is saying that a kid named Meng Liang is causing trouble. As long as Meng Liang's entourage is not deaf, he will find out sooner or later. As long as Meng Hun was not stupid, he should have thought of that. If he did not capture Meng Liang and hesitated for a moment, Meng Liang would have been rescued by his entourage. Qiguan Rang said unhappily, it seems like everything is still within your calculations. But didn't they agree yesterday to take their time and plan things out slowly? Why did she do all this after one night? Willful. She almost ruined the good situation. Fortunately, she knew what she was doing, and she had a corresponding plan to deal with the sudden changes in her actions. The pace was a bit fast, but as long as the final result was the same as expected, he would turn a blind eye. Chapter 167. Move faster. Otherwise, it will really fly away. Qiguan Rang tapped his feather fan on his knee. His expression was serious, as if he was thinking about something serious. If Meng Hun really kidnaps Meng Liang tonight, what are you going to do? In other words, what excuse could Jiang Pengji use to appear in front of Meng Hun without arousing his suspicion? Jiang Pengji was prepared for that. As you know, Meng Hun already knows where Meng Liang is. He also knows that Meng Liang is in the Lu residence. From his point of view, Meng Liang has a close relationship with the Lu mansion. Since that's the case, I'll use the excuse that Lady Cousin is capricious and sneaked out of the mansion to play. She didn't return for the whole night. The Lu mansion was anxious and sent people out to look for her. Coincidentally, they bumped into Meng Hun's group. Isn't that good? Using rescuing Meng Liang as an excuse, he would secretly help Meng Hun take Meng Liang away without arousing the slightest suspicion. After hearing this, Qiguan Rang's thin lips, which had always been tightly pursed, could not help but twitch. As shameless as he was, sometimes he had to admire Jiang Pengji, who was even more shameless and proud of it. He also pitied Meng Liang. Being schemed against by the person in front of him once wasn't enough. In such a short period of time, he was schemed against again and again. In the end, he was even being squeezed out of his final value. Jiang Pengji said, "Tonight, let's wait for a good show. Wenzheng, do you want to come? We've reserved the best seat for you." Qiguan Rang rejected him mercilessly. He said expressionlessly, "No, I'm old and tired. I don't want to torment myself." Compared to jumping up and down without any peace, he preferred to squat comfortably in one place. He didn't want excitement, only stability. "That's a pity." Jiang Pengji picked up the teacup and took a sip. She said to the system, "It's almost time. Start the semi-interactive streaming mission." The title remains the same. Just put, "How to kill Meng Liang gracefully without wasting time." Her relationship with the system was very stiff, but due to the current situation where the two of them could not be separated, while she was wary of the system, she also had to constantly pay attention to its little tricks. She tried her best to take the initiative and control the rhythm of the situation, so as to prevent the situation from getting out of control. The system wanted to throw a tantrum, but its job was to live stream. If Jiang Pengji really did not live stream, its losses would be incalculable. He could go against anything, but there was no need to go against the popularity points. Therefore, when Jiang Pengji suggested starting a semi-interactive live stream mode and entering the main topic of the mission, it reacted immediately. Tens of thousands of viewers flooded into the live stream room in an instant. Countless bullet comments flew across the virtual screen. "Chun Lai, I was so worried. I waited for a long time yesterday, but the host didn't start her live stream. I thought she wouldn't do it again. Ian, I'm also worried +1. This is the first time I've heard about this live stream room. Yesterday, I came to watch the live stream after being recommended by my roommate, but I found that the live stream room wasn't open at all. I thought something had happened to the host and she couldn't start the live stream. Dashu Xiaobing, although I'm quite worried, considering the uniqueness of the host's live broadcast room, it's good enough that she can broadcast live. I really can't expect to broadcast live every day. Maybe the host encountered something and couldn't attend to the live broadcast." Some people expressed their worries, and a small group of new viewers greeted them. The rest of the viewers were shocked by the title hanging in the live broadcast room. "How to kill Meng Liang gracefully without wasting time." There was a limit to the number of people in the live broadcast room, and there were many people queuing up to watch the live broadcast, so not everyone could keep up with the progress of the live broadcast. Who was Meng Liang? Many people were confused. "Little fairy, who is this Meng Liang? Why did the host broadcast him to death? What kind of atrocious things did he do? Fengqi Tianlan, isn't this room supposed to broadcast palace intrigue? Why did it become a place to broadcast the trial of a criminal? If that's the case, it feels like I'm watching all kinds of novels about trials. How does the host plan to sentence him? Isn't it bloody?" There were many new viewers who didn't know what was going on, but there were also many old viewers who had been paying attention to the live broadcast room and knew about Meng Liang. In response to the questions from the new viewers, they briefly explained Meng Liang's background and what he had done. For a moment, many sympathetic viewers said that the scumbag deserved to die. Of course, there were always people who liked to disagree. "Librarian Auntie, even if Meng Liang did something wrong, the host doesn't have the right to kill him, does she? He broke the law, and as long as these things get out, he'll definitely be punished by the law. The host's behavior is so barbaric, and it's a double standard." There were a few similar comments, and they all said that Jiang Pengji was a busybody. She wasn't serving tea, so why did she have to extend her hands so far? Jiang Pengji chose to ignore these comments. She didn't have the slightest intention to explain or refute them. It wasn't that she couldn't argue with them, but she didn't want to waste her breath on such low IQ people. When did she say that she was a good person? When did she say that she was a good person who upheld justice? Upholding justice was a matter of the law. What did it have to do with her? She killed Meng Liang simply because she didn't like Meng Liang. That brat had blocked her way and crossed her bottom line. Essentially, she was only doing it for her own benefit. Getting rid of a scumbag for the people was just a side benefit. In today's era, even if Meng Liang had done something even more outrageous, as long as the Meng family could bear the blame, no one could easily punish Meng Liang, let alone take his life. Even if Meng Liang had done something even worse, no one could easily punish him, let alone take his life. In an era where the law was unclear, the social classes were clearly defined, and the people were ignorant, the law was bullshit. Zhenjinda Jiangshan Ruhua, the streamer has no morals. If you want to find truth, kindness, and beauty here, don't come in. It hurts your eyes. Jiang Pengji had no intention of completing the task. Instead, she practiced her calligraphy for a while. She analyzed the current situation with Qiguan Rang and exchanged their opinions. There was no bloody scene at all as they had expected. Host V, the main content of the live stream starts at night. It's a dark and windy night, so it's time for the Easter egg. A string of 666666666 popped up on the bullet screen. Zhenjinda Jiangshan Ruhua, my streamer, you're amazing. You have such a long Easter egg, but I only want to see the main content. Ian, read the main content +1 Chun Lai, read the main content +2. No matter how many people asked for the main content, Jiang Pengji remained unmoved. In the blink of an eye, night fell. Jiang Pengji temporarily turned off the live stream and changed into a black outfit that was convenient for her to move around at night. She raised her hand and pulled the black mask over her face, covering most of her face. County Chief, do you think the news is true? Didn't you say that the bastard was hiding in the loos? The person who spoke was trembling, afraid that it was a trap for them. After all, Meng Liang had been crazy for a long time. Meng Liang has been hiding in the loos. We have nowhere to go. Meng Han's eyes flashed with a hint of hatred. Whether it's true or not, we have to go. If we miss this opportunity, it'll be hard to take his life in the future. Someone else was worried. County Chief, what if it's a trap? Meng Han snorted and casually said, is Meng Liang that smart? Everyone was speechless. Chapter 168. Meng Liang was an idiot through and through, but he was so arrogant that he thought he was as talented as Wang Zhua. But who wouldn't know of his capabilities if they had even heard of his name? If they thought that Meng Liang had deliberately spread the rumor about the gambling house to trap them, it would be too much for Meng Liang's brain to handle. But someone next to him said anxiously, didn't you say that the little bastard was hiding in the Lu mansion? The Lu mansion has been disgraced. In order not to be punished by the Mengs, they will definitely try to find him, right? Do you think it's possible that we won't find him? Meng Han lowered his eyes and said, it's possible, so we have to be quick. Let's leave it to fate and luck. In order to catch Meng Liang, Meng Han took a few healthy brothers down the mountain and disguised themselves as ordinary people to sneak into the city. They pretended to be gamblers and walked around the gambling house. With the excuse of going to the toilet, they got a rough idea of the internal structure of the gambling house. I heard that this gambling house often does immoral things. They lock the people they catch in the woodshed. If the little bastard is really here, he's probably locked in there too. This is the general structure of the gambling house, and the woodshed is here. The man who spoke was originally a scout, specializing in gathering information from the front line. Now he just wanted to get a feel of the gambling house, so it wasn't difficult for him. There are a lot of thugs in this gambling house. If we rush in and grab him, we might make a big deal out of it. It'll be hard to get out of the city tomorrow, someone suggested. One of them suggested, then let's wait until nightfall and take advantage of the darkness to sneak over and capture them. Meng Han nodded. let's do that. Before we do it, we need to keep an eye on the front and back doors of the gambling house. As the sky darkened, the woodshed was shrouded in darkness. Everyone's vision was dim, and the air was filled with pungent dust. Meng Liang was tied up with a rough hemp rope. He lay on the ground and curled up into a small ball. His long eyelashes trembled along with his erratic breathing, and his eyebrows would occasionally furrow slightly. Coupled with the bruises on his face, he looked very pitiful. Even though people knew he was a man, they still couldn't help but look at him with love and sympathy. There were two thugs outside the woodshed. One of them was standing while the other was sitting. They were chatting casually, and the content of the conversation was related to Meng Liang. "Hey, that kid is still stubborn and unwilling to confess?" One of the thugs rubbed his arms to dispel the coldness of the night. He spat at the corner of the wall and said unhappily, "What's the point of doing this? If the boss is angry, he can do anything." Another person said, "Hey, it's not that the kid doesn't want to tell us. It was clear that there was something wrong with his throat. He couldn't use his hands and couldn't write. The strange thing was that the doctor came over to take a look and said that there was nothing wrong with him." This made the boss very angry. Meng Liang had lost a debt of several thousand taels of silver, but his partner had won more than 4,000 taels of silver from the gambling house and escaped. Was the gambling house losing money? It was a small business and didn't accept credit. He didn't expect that after working so hard to run such a gambling house and going against his conscience to earn so much black-hearted money, he would be tricked by a few young lads in the end. All the money he had painstakingly earned over the years went into someone else's pocket. It would be strange if the gambling house owner wasn't furious. They forced Meng Liang to ask about Jiang Pengji and Nongqin's whereabouts, but the sissy kid was still putting on airs and wouldn't talk. In the beginning, the owner of the casino and the thugs thought Meng Liang was just being stubborn, so they gave him a good beating. Meng Liang screamed in pain after being hit twice. He didn't look like someone with a backbone at all. He didn't even beg for mercy. His watery eyes were swollen from crying. The thug from before asked, "Isn't this kid pretending?" The thug rolled his eyes in disdain. "Pretending? How is this pretending? Every time he was hit, he would howl like a pig being slaughtered. He knelt when he was told to. His knees were as soft as mud. Did he have any backbone? You didn't see him crying while hugging the boss's leg. Girls aren't that weak. But didn't we say that the kid might be from one of those noble families?" The thug continued to roll his eyes. "Have you seen any noble as weak as the one inside? Even though I don't know how to read, I know that the real nobles would rather have their heads chopped off than kneel and beg. So, the one inside is a fake." Because it was the night shift, the thug went home to sleep during the day and missed a lot of things. Speaking of this, the thug suddenly chuckled. He put one hand on his partner's shoulder and whispered mysteriously, "Of course he's a fake. Have you seen any noble more coquettish than those young men in the south courtyard? That face is as beautiful as a fairy, but it's so coquettish inside." The boss was so angry that he asked his brothers to teach him a lesson and make him give in. Guess what happened in the end? He. In the woodshed, the unconscious Meng Liang slowly woke up. When he heard the conversation, he was so angry that he almost broke his teeth. Then what does boss plan to do with him? Meng Liang heard another person say, "What else can we do?" If he couldn't catch the other two, and the one inside couldn't say anything, what was the point of keeping him alive? One more day means one more person's food. But he's really good looking. He's even prettier than the top Langjuns in the south courtyard. If we take good care of him, teach him well, and sell him for 3 to 5 years, he'll be able to hook up with some rich people. Maybe the boss will earn a few times more. What kind of place was the south courtyard? It was commonly known as a brothel, a place that sold men. It was also a brothel frequented by many men who liked men. When Meng Liang heard this, he was so angry that he almost fainted. His heart was filled with anger, and he tried to open his mouth to scream, but the sound that came out was a hoarse ah. He angrily hit the ground with his elbow, his eyes blazing with hatred. Meng Liang hated those gangsters who had humiliated him, but he hated Lu Shi even more. The people in the casino didn't know what it meant to be kind to a woman. They slapped him several times to wake him up, and then they tortured him. He tried to open his mouth to speak and scold these lowlifes, but his throat seemed to have been stolen. He couldn't say anything, as if he was born mute. What was worse was that he couldn't feel anything below his elbows, let alone pick up a pen to write. He couldn't open his mouth to speak, and he couldn't write. The people in the casino lost their patience. They slapped him a few times, and he almost lost his mind. He wasn't someone who could take hardship, and he was afraid of pain. Soon, he couldn't take it anymore. He knelt down and begged for mercy from the lowlifes he despised. Chapter 169. Jiang Pengji was good at hiding. She was dressed in black and had a mask over her face. With the cover of the night, she had an easier time. But she was not there to save people, so when she jumped over the wall to enter the yard, she deliberately left an obvious flaw. Ziyinghua, I like the streamer's posture of jumping over the wall. It's like watching a martial arts movie. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, I'm rubbing my face, but I'm still looking forward to the streamer's elegant qigong. Although it looks cool now, it feels too down to earth. Normally, shouldn't the streamer just spread her arms and fly? Ian, Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, you're not talking about a person, but a bird, right? Lo Siji Lianmeng, I feel like I'm the only one in the entire streaming room who saw through the streamer's other move. What was the truth? Jiang Pengji's seemingly unintentional or even deliberate move before she jumped over the wall. She could have climbed over the wall without alerting anyone, but she still had to look around. She knew that if she took a small step out of the shadow of the wall, her body would be exposed to the relatively bright moonlight. Even if it was only for a short period of time, ordinary people would not be able to see it. But Meng Han and his men had been guarding the back door of the gambling house for a while. How could they not see it? Oh no. Someone with suspicious movements has gone in. The scout beside Meng Han said in a low voice at the same time. They all looked gloomy. Is it the Lus or the Meng's entourage? Meng Han analyzed. The Lus are a famous aristocratic family in Hejin County. If they wanted to save people, they wouldn't have done it so sneakily. They could have just found an excuse to break into the gambling house. They must be the Meng's entourage for being so cautious and skilled. County Chief, should we go in now? The scout asked in a low voice. Originally, they had already sent one of their men in, hoping to take down the guards without alerting the gambling house. Then, they could work together to snatch Meng Liang from the inside. But now, they couldn't wait any longer. If they ran into the black shadow just now, wouldn't they have to fight? Meng Han hated Meng Liang to the core, but he would not deny the ability of the Meng's army or the Meng's entourage. If they ran into each other, Meng Han would lose another of his men. Thinking of this, Meng Han waved his hand and said gloomily, "Let's go." Meng Han was tall and sturdy. He could reach the edge of the wall just by raising his arm, so it was the easiest for him to climb over the wall. After running 2 steps, he quickly stepped on the wall with the tips of his feet and climbed up a few steps. He raised his hand to support himself on the edge of the wall and turned his body sideways to enter the wall in the most effortless way. The others also did the same, jumping in one after another without making any noise. Jiang Pengji was hidden in the dark. Seeing that they had all climbed in, her lips curled up under the black veil. The show had officially begun. Ziyinghua, #StarryEye, I'm a newbie in the live broadcast room. Who was the one who led the team to climb over the wall? Canteen Daffin Auntie, although I'm a veteran, I still don't know who he is. Lo Siji Lianmeng, I've sorted out the content of the host's live stream, the people she met, and the things she experienced. I've made a rough relationship table. According to the plot, that person should be the unlucky captain. Yen, Captain. The unlucky guy who was cuckolded by Meng Liang and lived on the Huluan beer grassland? Lo Siji Lianmeng, according to my analysis, this is the most likely person. But we can't rule out the possibility that the host hooked up with a new bee when she wasn't streaming yesterday. If that's the case, that person's identity is a mystery. Meng Han and the others soon noticed that something was wrong. The place was too quiet. His nerves were taut, and an ominous premonition surged in his heart. Could it be that Meng Liang had really been enlightened? Was he trying to lure them over so that he could kill them all at once? Just as Meng Han was hesitating and preparing for the worst, two strange objects caught his attention. They were hiding in the dark, where the human eye could easily miss them. The shadows were heavy and hard to spot. He's still alive, but the back of his neck was hit hard. He won't wake up for a while. The scout received Meng Han's signal and went forward to investigate. He found that the two objects were not objects at all. They were two thugs from the gambling house. The skin on the back of the neck was bruised, which showed how strong the attacker was. If the attacker had been any stronger, they would have been dead. Meng Han said, "Let's go." The place where the thugs were supposed to be standing guard was empty. Then where did they go? Meng Han found a few thugs who had been knocked out and thrown into the dark. He was shocked. He had run into a master. The marks are the same and the speed is very fast. It seems to be the work of the same person. These thugs didn't even have time to react before they were knocked out. The scout said with pity. Such a talent, but he is working for the Mengs. If it was the Mengs in the Xia dynasty during the reign of Duke Meng, it would be worthy of admiration. But the Mengs now? His loyalty was all for a dog. The county captain was willing to sacrifice his life for the Mengs, but how did the Mengs repay him? They allowed Meng Liang, the bastard, to kill the county captain's wife and daughter. Meng Zhan, the bastard who gave birth to Meng Liang, was not human either. As a father, his son had made a huge mistake. Instead of thinking about how to teach him a lesson, he tried to cover up the fact that the county captain's wife and daughter were killed. If Meng Liang hadn't spilled the beans, the county captain would still be in the dark. That's enough. Meng Han wasn't a foolishly loyal person, but he didn't like to belittle his old boss. There was only a wall between them. Jiang Pengji sat on the eaves and overheard their conversation. Her eyes flickered slightly. Under the eaves, the thugs guarding the woodshed were yawning. They looked very tired. One of them patted the shoulder of one of them and mumbled, "Keep an eye on them for me. I'm going to take a nap." "Don't worry. Not many people come here. If the boss comes to check on us, I'll call you." The gambling house had some prestige in the vicinity. Normal hooligans did not dare to cause trouble there. The hired thugs only needed to guard the door and occasionally go out to collect debts. Their work was still very leisurely, except when the owner came down to patrol and was on guard duty, they could slack off. As soon as the two of them finished talking, they saw a shadow flash in front of them, and a cold wind blew. One of them raised his hand and rubbed his arm, shivering as he said, Did you see anything just now?" The other man's teeth were chattering as he stuttered, You also saw a shadow?" Chapter 170. They didn't have to be afraid of ghosts knocking on their door if they didn't do anything shameful. But did they dare to promise that they hadn't done anything shameful? Instead of saying that they saw a ghost, it was more accurate to say that there was a ghost living in their hearts. While they were panicking, the back of their necks suddenly suffered an unspeakable blow. In the next second, the pain spread throughout their bodies. Their eyes were filled with darkness. Before they could open their mouths, their eyelids felt as heavy as lead. It was as if the world had been turned upside down. Before they could even realize that they were dizzy, their consciousness had already sunk into darkness. Thud. Thud. It was the dull sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Jiang Pengji was hanging upside down on the eaves. She used strength from her waist to climb up the eaves. She loosened her legs and landed easily. Jiang Pengji kicked the two unconscious thugs to the side. She skillfully removed all the door handles from the door. She pushed the wooden door open and clearly saw Meng Liang curled up on the ground. Meng Liang was also awake, but the anxiety and fear in his heart had reached its peak. When the wooden door was opened, the cold wind from outside poured in. His skin shivered and he had goosebumps. With the dim moonlight outside, Meng Liang could barely see the figure of the person. He was delighted, thinking that it was his entourage who had come to rescue him. He regained his usual arrogance and showed an angry face to Jiang Pengji. Although he could only make vague, sounds, it was obvious from his angry tone that the words he wanted to say were not pleasant to the ear. Jiang Pengji's eyes showed concern. She was not angry at Meng Liang's attitude at all. Just as she was about to go forward and untie the ropes on his hands and feet, a gust of cold wind blew behind her. The audience in the streaming room all screamed. The bullet screen was filled with reminders, afraid that Jiang Pengji would be ambushed and hurt. Dashu Xiaobing, there's someone behind you. As the cold wind blew, Jiang Pengji bent over and touched the knot of the ropes with her fingertips. Seeing that Jiang Pengji was about to be stabbed in the back, she suddenly moved sideways. The sharp blade did not hit her, but Meng Liang's arm. Blood splashed everywhere. Meng Liang felt the pain and opened his mouth to let out a strange and hoarse howl. Meng Han and his comrades fought together, so they had a tacit understanding of each other. Even without any verbal communication, the others already knew what Meng Han was planning. Meng Han understood. Meng Han entangled Jiang Pengji so that she would not have the time to worry about Meng Liang. The others took advantage of the chaos to kidnap Meng Liang. The people in the live streaming room were in an uproar. Yu Yecheng, F***CK, one more? How shameless. Hit me if you don't like it, be careful, streamer. These people are trying to kidnap Meng Liang. Luiwezi Sando, streamer, I'll give him a kick to end his family line. How dare he beat me up? The viewers in the streaming room were so anxious that they wished they could smash their keyboards and climb into the screen to help Jiang Pengji. Even though they were all weaklings, they were still very strong. Do you believe that a empty tie-crushing top could smash someone until their spleen bled? Meng Han thought that Jiang Pengji was a member of the Mengs, so he didn't kill her for the sake of their old friendship. But the fact was that Meng Han couldn't beat Jiang Pengji even if he tried his best. Now that he was showing mercy, he couldn't do anything to her. While dodging Meng Han's knife, Jiang Pengji also stopped others from trying to kidnap Meng Liang. Meng Liang, who was the target of the two sides, had already put away his arrogance. He tried to shrink his neck, afraid that Meng Han's knife would fall on him. That knife really hurt. He didn't know how much blood he had lost. When he was safe, he would punish the squire who had come to save him. The Mengs didn't feed useless people. They had given him food and shelter for so many years, but in the end, he couldn't even protect him and got injured. What was the point of keeping such useless people? He wouldn't be grateful for the squire who had risked his life to save him, because it was his duty. If he did well, he wouldn't be rewarded. If he didn't do well, he would be punished. The Mengs fed them, so their lives belonged to the Mengs. Not only did they fail to protect him, but they also got him injured. Meng Han was entangled with Jiang Pengji, but he was from the army. The so-called martial arts were used to kill enemies. His moves were big and quick, so it was easy for him to be at a disadvantage when he met someone who was agile. He showed mercy to Jiang Pengji, so he couldn't keep her busy. It wasn't a good idea to continue like this. Jiang Pengji thought about it and deliberately showed an opening. She took out a pile of firewood in the woodshed and pretended to attack Meng Han's companion. Meng Han saw that and chose to protect his companion without thinking. But the next second, he thought, oh no. His wrist holding the knife was hit hard, and his arm went numb. He couldn't help but let go of the knife, and it was instantly taken away by the man in black. Almost at the same time, his knees were attacked, and he subconsciously bent his knees. He was in a half-kneeling position. His arms were locked behind his back, and his shoulders were still heavy. He tried to stand up, but he couldn't. Don't move. If you move, his neck will be in danger. Jiang Pengji held the knife against Meng Hun's neck, and Meng Liang had been taken by someone else. The two sides were in a stalemate. I dare you to move. Meng Hun's companion was anxious, afraid that the man in black would kill Meng Hun. Why wouldn't I dare? Those who can threaten me in this world are either dead or haven't been born yet. Jiang Pengji didn't try to cover her voice, so there were two people who couldn't stay calm. One was Meng Liang. He thought the man in black was a member of the Mengs who came to rescue him. The other was Meng Hun. He had good hearing and memory, so he naturally remembered who the voice belonged to. He suddenly felt indescribably nervous. Jiang Pengji seemed to have noticed Meng Hun's abnormality. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "Who are you guys?" Meng Hun deliberately lowered his voice and said to his companion, "Don't worry about me. Kill that bastard." "How can I do that?" "I can't do that." Meng Hun could be ruthless, but for these people, the lives of thousands of Meng Liang were worth less than a toe of Meng Hun's. The two sides were in a stalemate. Jiang Pengji had to, helplessly, shake her head. She restrained Meng Hun and tried to communicate with them. "I don't know why you guys are so determined to take my cousin's life. She is just a girl who rarely leaves her house. How could she make you guys hate her so much? Please think twice. If it's a misunderstanding, I will apologize for my cousin." "She?" Meng Hun's eyes darkened. This young man with extraordinary skills was indeed Lu Shi, the Lang Jun from that day. He asked, "This is a man. How could he be your cousin?" Chapter 171. Meng Hun and even Meng Liang were dumbfounded, not to mention the audience in the live broadcast room. Did he say that? Meng Liang did say that, but not to Jiang Pengji. He said it to his second wife, Gu Zhen. Jiang Pengji didn't care who she said it to. She said it anyway, and it wasn't considered a lie. Meng Hun did not suspect that Jiang Pengji was making things up. Instead, he was sure that Meng Liang was telling lies. He laughed so hard that he forgot to hide his voice. "You are a living Buddha. How could you be blinded by such a villain?" Jiang Pengji suddenly remembered something when she heard the familiar voice. She turned Meng Hun's face to take a closer look. Then she showed an angry expression. She asked in a low voice, "How could it be you?" Meng Hun did not answer. Instead, he asked, "How did this bastard frame me?" "Why would I want to frame him? And what would I use to frame Meng Liang? Wasn't this bastard responsible for the death of my wife and daughter? How dare he lie to me?" Jiang Pengji looked at Meng Liang coldly and then at Meng Hun, who was full of hatred. She was hesitant. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from outside. Everyone in the woodshed tensed up. Jiang Pengji had no choice but to take a deep breath and say in a stiff voice, "We can't stay here for long. Let's go somewhere else." Even so, she did not let go of the knife that was pointed at Meng Hun's neck. Meng Hun's subordinates did not dare to act rashly. Meng Liang's brain was not good, but his intuition was not bad. Whether it was Meng Hun on the left, who had killed his wife and daughter, or Lu Shi on the right, who had deliberately set him up and humiliated him in the gambling house, both of them were black-hearted and had no good intentions towards him. Unfortunately, he could not speak or write. Otherwise, he would have seen through Lu Shi's disguise. "It's safe here. No one will come to disturb us for the time being. Now you have enough time to tell me the truth. I hate lies and betrayals." Her voice was cold as she said to Meng Hun, "Previously, I thought you were a desperate refugee who had to leave your homeland. Now that I think about it, it was just a trick you set up to get close to me and extract information, right?" Jiang Pengji hadn't streamed yesterday, so the viewers in the streaming room didn't know how good her acting skills were. They comforted her one after another. Ian, host, don't cry. Don't be sad. This stinky man is too cunning. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, poor streamer. She's been cheated. I feel like I've been ked. Sigh, don't feel bad. Sheehan, yeah, don't feel bad. We will support you. Let this person go to hell. Apart from the naive audience and the newbies who didn't understand the situation, there was another group of people who had a different attitude. Lo CG Lianmeng, I'll bet one spicy stick that the streamer is cheating us. Nongfu Shanquan Yudi Yangshuan, life is like a drama. It all depends on acting skills. After the last time, I no longer believe in the host's integrity. The audience in the live broadcast room was impressed. One by one, they scratched their ears and cheeks. Some of them had seen through the truth, but most of them still sympathized with the streamer. Jiang Pengji accepted the sympathy generously, but she still had to show off her acting skills. Meng Hun pursed his lips and cupped his hands at her. It's my fault. I wasn't honest with you. But this matter concerns the lives of my comrades, so I have to hide it. It doesn't matter if I die, but I'm afraid I won't be able to kill the enemy. Jiang Pengji loosened her grip on Meng Hun's neck. Meng Hun felt it and sighed in his heart. Lu Shi's Lang Jun was good at martial arts, but he was kind and soft-hearted. It was too easy for him to be taken advantage of. Jiang Pengji didn't seem to notice the change in Meng Hun's expression. She asked sternly, "You said my cousin." "No, my cousin was deceiving me." "What's going on? Didn't you cause the war in Meng County in Sang Prefecture?" "The war spread and many people suffered because of it." Meng Hun felt a pain in his heart. Jiang Pengji had evoked the worst memory in his heart. He didn't think too much at that time because he wanted to avenge his wife and daughter. He brought his brothers to rebel against the Mengs and burned down the county governor's manor. But he didn't expect the Mengs to be so short-sighted that they used the Mengs' army just to catch them. Meng Liang's evil deeds and the Mengs' exploitation of the common people had already caused a lot of resentment among the people. The Mengs' army exploited the merchants and the common people in the name of searching for Meng Hun and the others. It was called a search, but it was actually to loot the property of the innocent people and take their wives and daughters. The Mengs' army was no longer a famous and courageous army in the Xia dynasty. They were just a bunch of ruffians. Meng Hun rebelled against the Mengs. That was the fuse, but the real cause of the chaos in Meng County was the Mengs' army itself. But no matter what, the cause was Meng Hun. His lips trembled. "Although I don't know what kind of flowery words this bastard used to deceive you, I'm not a treacherous person. I've never done anything wrong to the Mengs, nor have I done anything wrong to the people of Meng County." Jiang Pengji's eyes wandered between Meng Liang and Meng Hun. Her eyes flickered as if she was thinking about whether their words were true or not. The others had heard about Jiang Pengji from Meng Hun, so they had a good impression of her. They did not act rashly. Jiang Pengji said, "If that's the case, why don't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" Meng Hun secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that there was still room for negotiation. Not only was the young Lang Jun in front of him kind, but he could also tell right from wrong. "I'll have to start from a few months ago." Meng Hun took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would strangle Meng Liang. He had his own plans. Meng Liang, that bastard, had to die. Otherwise, how could he go to hell to see his wife and daughter? After Meng Liang's death, Lu Shi could take his head to the Mengs and ask for an explanation. That way, the Mengs would owe him a favor. At the same time, he also hoped that Jiang Pengji could help his brother out for the sake of this. He did not care if he died, but he could not let his brothers die in vain. With that in mind, Meng Hun could barely calm down and tell the whole story. Although Meng Hun tried his best to calm down, his eyes were still red and tears were about to fall. The audience in the streaming room did not praise Meng Liang anymore. They all felt sorry for Meng Hun. It was a beautiful scene to see a delicate person crying in the wind. After watching it, one could only sigh and then feel nothing else. But Meng Han was a 7-foot-tall man. His eyes were red because he was talking about something sad. The audience could see that he was trying his best to hold it in. His hands were clenched into fists. His knuckles were white and his eyes were fierce. Chapter 172. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, my heart aches. Whether it's in the host's world or in reality, good people never get rewarded. Lo Siji Lianmeng, the Mengs are really bad. How could a loyal man like him be forced into such a corner? But I still have to say that he's a brave man. Loyalty doesn't mean blind loyalty. He's a good man. If you don't acknowledge me, it's unfair. Xian, I hope you can help him. He's too pitiful. Luyuezi Sando, same. Although reality is cruel, I still believe that good people will be rewarded. Jiang Pengji was also shocked. She widened her eyes in disbelief. How could this be? Meng Han said, if you don't believe me, you can ask the merchants in Meng County. Even though the Meng's army tried to shut them up, I believe that someone will tell the truth. Even if you can't, you can ask about Meng Liang's reputation in Meng County. Jiang Pengji was hesitant. After a long time, she said, although I sympathize with what you've been through, you know that the Mengs are one of the 4 noble families in Dongqing. Even the government is afraid of them. They can only worship them and don't dare to offend them. How can a small family like mine go against the Mengs? For the safety of my family, I can't let you kill Meng Liang. Absolutely not. Meng Han felt helpless when he heard that. I can let you go and guarantee your safety. Leave Hejin County as soon as the gate opens tomorrow morning. Don't come back, and don't try to assassinate Meng Liang. Jiang Pengji added, I'll pretend that I don't know anything about what happened today. Meng Han was shocked. He smiled bitterly and said, you're still like this. What should we do in the future? What do you mean? Jiang Pengji asked. Meng Han said, you don't know this, but this bastard is narrow-minded and holds grudges. Now that he heard our conversation, how could he not remember? The young Lang Jun could pretend that nothing had happened tonight, but would he ever forget? If he gets out of danger and tells the Mengs some nonsense, I'm afraid that the Mengs will not only not thank you for saving their lives, but they will also attack the Lus. According to Meng Liang's character, it was highly possible that this would happen. Suddenly, Jiang Pengji was in a dilemma. She said hesitantly, how is this possible? Meng Han said flatly, why not? Meng Liang listened to the conversation between the 2 men, who had different thoughts. He was extremely anxious, but his hands and feet were tied up, and his life was in the hands of others. He couldn't make a sound, and he couldn't defend himself. He was so anxious that he was about to die. Although he did not know why Lu Shi had framed him, he was clear about one thing. In Lu Shi's hands, at least he had a way out. If Lu Shi was convinced by Meng Han, he would be dead. Behave yourself, or I'll pinch you to death. One of Meng Han's henchmen kicked Meng Liang's thigh, and Meng Liang almost exploded as if someone had stepped on his tail. I'm afraid you don't know that the Meng family of Zhangzhou and the Lu family of Hejin used to have a grudge against each other. It's just that County Chief Lu, who is also Lang Juan's father, has been cautious and tough all these years. That's why the Mengs didn't punish him. Meng Han couldn't care less. He was afraid that Jiang Pengji would be stupid and release the tiger back into the mountains. The first lady of your family used to be the matriarch of the Mengs. What? Jiang Pengji was shocked and almost lost her composure. What nonsense are you talking about? How dare you tarnish my mother's reputation? Meng Han swore, if I'm lying, I'll be struck by lightning and I'll be sent to hell after I die. I'll never have a good ending. Jiang Pengji calmed down a little after hearing that. She continued to ask, well, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Although Meng Han hated Meng Liang, he didn't like to add fuel to the fire or take advantage of the situation. He just calmly told what he knew. If I remember correctly, the first lady of your family was the daughter of a concubine from the Gu family of Langya. She married Meng Zhan many years ago, but Meng Zhan spoiled his wife and neglected his concubine. He suspected that the first lady had an affair with another man, so he humiliated the first lady. He even beat and scolded the first lady's eldest son. Then they divorced, and a few years later, the first lady remarried County Chief Lu. No matter what kind of man he was, if the woman he abandoned found another man, he would definitely feel uncomfortable. Meng Zhan was even more narrow-minded. Meng Han had been his guard for many years, so he often heard him curse after drinking. Meng Zhan still holds a grudge against the first lady's remarriage. If I let Meng Liang go back and say that I rebelled against the Mengs and was manipulated by the Lus, think about it. What will happen? Will the Mengs let go of your family? Although Meng Han was an uncouth man, he was also meticulous and more meticulous than the average martial artist. He was also more rational. Jiang Pengji seemed to be persuaded by Meng Han's words. She rubbed her eyebrows tiredly and asked, "Then what do you think we should do?" Meng Han made up his mind. He knelt down and kowtowed to her. Meng Liang must die. He's an ungrateful bastard. If we let him live, he'll bring disaster to you. If that's the case, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can agree to it. Jiang Pengji moved sideways and helped Meng Han up. You're a man. How can you kneel just because you want to? Get up. Meng Han's subordinates wanted to step forward, but Meng Han refused. He looked stubborn. Since my wife and daughter died, I've been living on hatred. Even if I fall into hell and never reincarnate, I'll drag this little bastard down with me. You're kind and I don't want to make things difficult for you. I just hope you can let me go and let me kill this bastard to avenge my wife and daughter. Then you can blame Meng Liang's death on me. Jiang Pengji's heart ached. She was about to stop him, but Meng Han stubbornly interrupted her. You have nothing to do with the bastard's death. Then you can cut off my head. That way, you'll be able to explain yourself. I'm not afraid of death. I just hope you can have mercy on me and take care of my brothers after I die. After he finished, he kowtowed to her. His forehead hit the ground hard and made a sound that made people tremble. Jiang Pengji had planned all of that. Otherwise, why would she say she was evil? But after experiencing it, it was a different feeling. People with a sincere heart were often able to move people's hearts, including Jiang Pengji. She helped Meng Han up with an irresistible force. Chapter 173. Meng Han was elated. Did that mean she agreed? However, Jiang Pengji changed the topic. But are you really willing to sacrifice your life for someone like that? Meng Han smiled bitterly. Do you know what it means to value a human life? My life is worthless, but it's worth it if it can be exchanged for Meng Liang's life. There are many people in Meng County who want him dead, but they don't even know where he is, let alone kill him to avenge their loved ones. Jiang Pengji sighed and said, You won't be satisfied until you kill him? Meng Han nodded. Yes, Meng Liang has to die. Otherwise, I won't let him go even if I become a vengeful spirit. Meng Liang was already in despair. He knew he couldn't escape this time. He screamed until his throat was hoarse, but he still couldn't defend himself. Did he do wrong? What did he do wrong? He was born a member of the Mengs. He was born to enjoy wealth and glory. So what if one or two of those peasants died? There was only one word to describe him, unrepentant. Jiang Pengji sighed. Since you're so determined, before Jiang Pengji could finish, Meng Han's subordinates knelt down in unison. They all wanted to die for Meng Han. Exchanging their lives for Meng Liang's and saving the lives of others was a good deal. Lang Jun, the county commander, can't die. He's had a hard life, and his brothers still need the county commander. Let me be the one to die. I have no parents, no family, no wife, and no one to drag me down. If I die, I die. Don't listen to him. If he wants to die, I'll do it. No one can fight me. The viewers in the live streaming room were touched. If it were any of them, they wouldn't be willing to die for someone else, especially when that person was not even related to them. Lo Siji Lianmeng, these people in the ancient times. Although they look stupid and ridiculous from a modern point of view, they have a lot of sincerity that modern people don't have. It's not just an empty saying that a gentleman will die for his bosom friend. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, I'm starting to hate the streamer. I feel like she's really sincere with her hypocrisy. Deheo Deguatsi, I'm starting to hate her too. She's too cold. Shanghajia prawn skin, indifference +1 even if the Anongfu spring is a little dangerous. Viewer didn't mean to cause trouble. The viewers in the live streaming room were affected. Some people hated it and felt disgusted, but naturally, there were also people who liked this style. Hit me if you don't agree, the streamer has no morals. Who said she is a good person? Now you know she's cold. Jin's Jiangshan is as picturesque, indifference is the host's normal style, right? I'm more inclined to be rational than indifferent. Only such a person could live well in any environment. She wouldn't bring trouble to her companions, but it would be bad luck to go against her. Wan, shut up. Go if you can. Did the host say that she was the representative of truth, kindness, and beauty? Ye Qingzhou, although that's the case, Nongfu Shanquan is a little worried. He's not wrong. The streamer is indeed sincere in plotting against others with hypocrisy. But, I think that as long as she treats the county chief well, unlike Meng Zhan, it's good enough. Everyone felt a little disgusted. They had to admit that they all hated the kind Virgin Mary who had no principles. But when faced with some things, they hoped to see the kind, and beautiful side. Whoever was a little bit cold would be scolded. Jiang Pengji, the streamer, was the same. What she did was not what the public expected. Naturally, it would cause others to hate her. Lo Siji Lianmeng, TSK. If you want to see a pure and untainted white lotus, go watch TV shows instead of watching the live streaming. Do any of you remember that the streamer wanted to do something big? Since ancient times, the winner takes all. That path was either to reach the top or to die. How painful would it be for a kind white lotus to fight for the world? If she didn't use force and intelligence to convince people, and didn't use schemes to trick people, was she supposed to rely on her gentleness to make people feel comfortable? TSK, if that was the case, it would be better to go see the hot girls in Japan. There were close-ups in high definition, and it would be disgusting. As for the streamer, she was flat-chested and had no figure. The bullet screen in the live streaming room didn't affect Jiang Pengji. It wasn't that she didn't see it, but she didn't think it was necessary to care or explain. She did her own thing and didn't care what others said. Her ears were filled with the voices of those people fighting for their lives. One of them even wanted to commit suicide. What are you doing? Jiang Pengji quickly grabbed the dagger from the man's hand and threw the weapon far away. She hated suicides the most. No matter what the original intention was, suicide was an act of cowardice. Get up, all of you. I have a way to deal with this. It's shameful for a man to fight for his life. Jiang Pengji said angrily. Her face was also angry. Obviously, she was really angry. The man who wanted to commit suicide was watched closely by everyone to prevent him from doing something stupid again. They didn't care about the reprimand in Jiang Pengji's tone. Their focus was on the first sentence. She said angrily, I'm not doing this to save you, nor is it for anything else. I just want to protect my clan and retreat from this disaster. I don't care if you want to live or die. If you want to die, don't die in front of me. Before Meng Hun could speak, Meng Hun's comrade asked, do you have any good ideas, Lang Jun? It's not a good idea, but it's better than what you're doing. Jiang Pengji said harshly, Meng Liang's behavior can't be left alive. I can hand him over to you. You can do whatever you want with him. But it's not that easy to protect all of you. The man said again, Lang Jun, we're listening. We'll do it no matter how hard it is. Meng Hun couldn't say anything. He was also the focus of his comrades' attention. They didn't want him to commit suicide. First of all, you have to bear the crime of kidnapping and killing Meng Liang. The man made a sound of doubt and said blankly, we should have killed him. Why would anyone fight for the crime? Jiang Pengji was speechless. To be honest, young man, you're kind of cute. She ignored the young man's words and continued, the Mengs won't give up after hearing the news. Meng Hun had something to say. Meng Zhan has always been suspicious of the first Lingjuan's bloodline. He doesn't recognize him. He has hinted many times that he wants Meng Liang to inherit the clan. If Meng Liang dies, the first Lang Jun will be the heir of the Mengs. Meng Zhan doesn't want that to happen. If Meng Liang died, Meng Zhan might really explode. Chapter 174. Meng Hun listened carefully, but in the end, he still didn't understand what she meant. Jiang Pengji continued to speak tirelessly. I'm afraid you don't know that because of the drought in the surrounding counties, many people have no choice but to become bandits and hide in the deep mountains near Hejin County. In recent days, bandits have been raiding houses more frequently. If there's a riot, the people will definitely be uneasy. Meng Hun vaguely understood and asked, Lang Jun, are you worried that the people will be in chaos and the bandits will take the opportunity to rebel? She nodded, but then slowly shook her head. You're only half right. You haven't mentioned the other half, the most important part. Meng Hun didn't understand. He was just a crude person. Even if he was meticulous, his brain couldn't compare to those black-hearted people. If the people's hearts are in chaos, how do you think they will react? Jiang Pengji guided him until a look of realization appeared on his face. Then she continued. Food is the most important thing to the people. No matter when or where, filling their stomachs is the most important thing for the people. However, it had only been a month since the spring plowing had ended. If news of this matter were to spread, they would have to wait for the summer planting, and it would be far from the autumn harvest. The farmers spent more than half of their harvest last year. What do you think will happen if someone deliberately spreads rumors, such as that the army will spread to Hejin County? Meng Hun's mouth and tongue were dry as if there was a fire burning in his throat. He said with some uncertainty, if that's the case, the people will definitely rush to buy rice to prevent the war from spreading. When the time comes, they won't have enough to eat, and the rice merchants will naturally take advantage of the situation to raise the price and make a fortune. When he left Meng County, the price of rice had already soared to 5 to 6 times the usual price. Even with such a high price, the demand was still not enough. It was easy to imagine how the profit-seeking merchants would make use of this opportunity to make a fortune. The price of grain could soar from 5 to 6 times the original price to more than 10 times, or even dozens of times. More than that. You seem to have forgotten how many bandits there are around Hejin County. They don't have food, so they rely on robbing to survive. How were they going to survive when the war broke out? It's impossible for us to buy from the rice merchants. We can only rob the commoners. Hearing this, Meng Hun was completely stunned. He was also born in poverty and had tasted hunger before. He had even seen people who were so hungry that they dug up grass and tree roots to eat. If he couldn't even dig up grass or tree roots, he would go and eat something called guanine clay, causing his stomach to become as big as a bucket and causing him to explode to death. Even worse, they would steal other people's children. If someone starved to death, their corpse would be eaten by others instead of being buried. Hejin County looked prosperous, but there were many hidden dangers in the dark. Meng Hun and the others followed Meng Liang to Hejin County. They hid in the deep mountains and forests. During that time, they encountered some traces of bandits. However, he did not want to alert the enemy, nor did he want to increase his losses, so he deliberately avoided them. Now that he thought about it, he felt a chill run down his spine. Because they were unfamiliar with the place and the people, they did not dare to go deep into the forest. They only moved around or hunted within a certain range. But in such a place, Meng Hun found the traces of more than one group of bandits. What did this mean? It meant that the seemingly peaceful Hejin County was now surrounded by bandits. Normally, those fugitives would exercise some restraint. Even if they robbed houses, they didn't dare to go too far and kill people. But if there was a civil war in Meng County, Tsang Prefecture, what would those bandits do? They needed to survive, they needed food, and they needed to make a fortune during the chaos. Whenever there was a civil war, the government would not be able to control them. If that happened, would they still behave themselves like they usually did? Meng Hun did not know what the butterfly effect was, but he knew that if Hejin County became like that, he had a lot to do with it. For a moment, he seemed to be speechless and could not say a word. The other subordinates also fell into silence. They all came from poor families and had suffered a lot. How could they not understand? Jiang Pengji sighed and said, "But I have a way to force down the price of food. Maybe it can ease the situation a little." Meng Hun suddenly looked up and stared at her. After a long time, he finally said something. "What do you plan to do, Lang Jun? Is there anything I can do for you?" She raised her hand and pinched between her eyebrows tiredly. She seemed to be exhausted. "I originally wanted to buy some food from Hu County. You know that my father is the county chief of Hu County. That place has been well managed by him. The drought has been greatly alleviated by using underground water. Now Hu County is 1,000 miles of fertile land and there is a surplus of food every year." Meng Hun nodded with yearning and agreed. "I often hear merchants talking about this. They say that Hu County used to be empty and full of starving people. But after Chief Lu took office, the situation has been getting better and better. Now it is a place that people yearn for." Speaking of this, he paused for a moment and said awkwardly, "You're trying to alleviate the food shortage in Hejin County with rice from Hu County. This is indeed a good thing, but you're still young and don't have much money with you. Even if Chief Lu agrees with you, I'm afraid that the money and effort you'll spend will be incalculable. Moreover, you might even arouse the jealousy of others. It was not easy to be a philanthropist. The chief of Hejin County might not want to see such a good thing that could win the people's hearts." Jiang Pengji said helplessly, "What you said is right. But if I don't do it, should I just stand by and watch?" Meng Hun was stumped by her question and was momentarily speechless. She continued, "If there was a better source of rice, why wouldn't I do it? But, who would be willing to be so generous? Who would have so much rice in their warehouse? In today's world, everyone looks out for themselves. Who would be willing to help the people?" The question stunned all the men in the room. They could not think of a solution either. At that moment, the young man whom Jiang Pengji thought was cute suddenly had an "I got it" expression on his face. He pointed at Meng Liang, who was still struggling, and stammered, He can do it." Everyone was dumbfounded. They looked like they were saying, "Are you kidding me?" If Meng Liang had a good heart, would the county chief have been forced into such a desperate situation? Jiang Pengji understood immediately before they could react, but she was still hesitant. Meng Hun saw her expression and knew that she had an idea, but she was too embarrassed to say it. "If you have any good ideas, you can tell me. If I can be of use, I will not refuse." Chapter 175. Meng Hun also understood why Jiang Pengji was silent. This method was indeed somewhat immoral. The others also realized that they wanted to use Meng Liang to exchange for food. But the county captain wanted to kill Meng Liang. If they used him to exchange for food, wouldn't they be letting him continue to cause trouble? No way. Are we going to let this little bastard go? If we use him as a hostage and ask the Mengs to give us food, he will definitely hold a grudge against us. Lang Jun and the county captain will be implicated. If we miss this opportunity, it will be hard to kill him in the future. I don't want to let this bastard go so easily. I don't want to let him go so easily. They all had the same opinion, but they were hesitant. Meng Hun clenched his fists unwillingly. Listening to their conversation, Meng Liang's heart felt like it was on a roller coaster. It went up and down, and it kept shaking. He had thought he was going to die, but now he felt like he could still save him. Based on his understanding of Meng Hun, he had a high chance of surviving. Humph. When he found his entourage or returned to the Mengs, he would kill every single one of them. No. He couldn't let them die too easily. He had to torture them ruthlessly before he could vent his anger. After a long time, Meng Hun loosened his fists. His palms were bleeding from his nails, but he didn't feel it. Let him write a letter asking for food. Meng Hun unwillingly clenched his teeth and secretly swallowed back the iron that was rising in his throat. His eyes were red as he said, "Let him keep his life. We still have a chance next time." Meng Liang laughed so hard that his stomach hurt. Jiang Pengji silently reflected on herself as she listened to the others. Was her heart really that black? Host V, #smirking. They are a group of honest boys. I can't bear to see them like this. The viewers in the streaming room also thought that Meng Liang would not die. They were filled with righteous indignation. But when they saw Jiang Pengji's bullet screen, some of the more experienced viewers lit candles for Meng Liang. Ye Qingzhou, #laughter cry. Can I say that I was also tricked by the streamer? He had thought that Meng Liang was not going to die. Lo Siji Lianmeng, I want to repent. I've shamed my ID. The host is such a black-hearted person. How could she slap herself in the face? She said she would kill Meng Liang gracefully. She would never let him live to see tomorrow's sun. Wa ai dashin yunji, I was wrong. I should have believed that the streamer was not a good person. Years pass between fingers, the streamer is such a bad person. I bet that poor Meng Liang thought he could be saved. Aizhuahua, light a row of candles for Meng Liang. At the same time, I feel sorry for the house full of honest boys. Jiang Pengji controlled her expression very well. She wore a solemn and dignified expression as she went to another room to fetch a brush and ink. He turned to Meng Liang and said, "Write it. If you don't want to suffer, then don't play tricks." Meng Liang snorted. His expression was arrogant. He looked at Jiang Pengji as if his eyes had been dipped in poison. Once he regained his freedom, not only would he humiliate Meng Liang and the other uncouth men, but he would also strip them of their power and make them unable to be men. He would also throw them into the South College, where they would receive lowly guests. After he was done torturing them and playing with them, he would kill them. He would not let Lu Shi go. Lu Shi's fate would be 100 times worse than Meng Hun's. The entire Lu family would be buried with him. Meng Liang was used to being unscrupulous. Even though he was still under the control of others, he was certain that Jiang Pengji and the others would not dare to do anything to him. He did not know how to restrain himself. The hatred in his eyes almost dyed his eyes red. It was as if he would pounce on someone and bite them the next second. Seeing Meng Liang's reaction, the others were worried. "Just you wait." Meng Liang swore in his heart. Jiang Pengji seemed to know what he wanted to say. Instead, she smiled at him provocatively. Meng Liang snorted again. Just as he was about to say that he could not move his wrist and could not write, he realized that his right hand, which had been unable to move before, was gradually regaining consciousness. He rubbed it a few times and it returned to normal. It was as if his previous weakness was just an illusion. He did not have the spare capacity to think. He picked up the brush, got used to the feeling, and then started writing. Although Meng Liang was not a good person, his handwriting was very good. The viewers in the live streaming room all expressed that they could not accept it. Wa ai-yunji, if anyone tells me that handwriting is like a person, I will slap them in the face. Meng Liang's actions, as well as his way of life, were the greatest mockery of this saying. After a while, Meng Liang finished writing and stamped his own seal on it. The content was simple and easy to understand. There was not much talent, and there were no traps in the writing. He was too arrogant. Meng Liang was certain that Jiang Pengji and the others would not dare to do anything to him. If that was the case, why would he need to do anything to the bamboo slip? It was only a few hundred dawn of grain. For the Mengs, such a small amount of grain was more than what was rotting in the rice barn every year. Jiang Pengji dried the ink on the bamboo slip with candlelight. After confirming that there were no problems, she rolled up the bamboo slip in satisfaction. In contrast to her satisfaction, the county chief looked as if he had lost his soul. His face was deathly pale. Yes, his enemy was so close at hand. He could choke him to death with a single move, but he could not. How could he not be angry? Meng Liang was even more proud of himself. However, Jiang Pengji's next sentence sent him straight from heaven to hell. No problem. Let's settle our grudges and grievances. Meng Han, Meng Liang, huh? Did they hear it wrong? That was what everyone was thinking at the moment. Jiang Pengji looked at them with confusion. She waved the bamboo slip in her hand. I only asked Meng Liang to write a letter to ask for grain from the Mengs. I didn't say you can't take revenge. Repay kindness with kindness, and repay hatred with hatred. That is the way of the world. Meng Liang will be a disaster if we let him live. They could not wrap their heads around it. Drifting on a curve, they almost got into an accident. But Lang Jun, if he dies, how will the Mengs give us the grain? Jiang Pengji said, send a letter and ask the Mengs to send the grain according to the letter. Kidnappers kidnap hostages and blackmail them. That's the normal procedure, isn't it? As for Meng Liang, he is in our hands. Isn't it just a matter of whether he lives or dies? If they give him the grain, he might live. But if they don't give him the grain, he will definitely die. It's up to the Mengs whether they want to give him the grain or not. How long would it take to go from heaven to hell? Chapter 176. Ye Qingzhou, my heart aches for Meng Liang. I've already taken a screenshot of his face. Now I've added a dumbfounded sentence. A's Huahua, my heart aches +1. I feel like he's in a daze. The viewers in the streaming room were right. Meng Liang was indeed in a daze. This was different from what he had imagined. He roared angrily and tried his best to speak. Perhaps it was a blessing from the heavens, but his voice slowly returned. At first, he was still slurring and couldn't speak smoothly. Niu Shi. You're a piece of sh*t. Although his words were vague, Meng Han understood what he was trying to say. He lifted his foot and kicked Meng Liang's cheek. Half of Meng Liang's face swelled up, and a warm metallic taste spread in his mouth. The force was so great that the other half of his face fell to the ground and scraped against the ground. When had he ever been treated like this? He had always been the one who kicked others, not the other way around. Meng Liang spat out a few teeth that had fallen out from the kick and mumbled, "You, cheese. You're a piece of sh*t. You're about to die and you still dare to curse? Today, I will avenge my wife and daughter who died in vain. Meng Liang, you're the one who will die a horrible death." Meng Han stepped forward and grabbed Meng Liang's hair. He was so strong that it seemed like he was going to tear his scalp off. Jiang Pengji covered her slightly raised lips with the bamboo slips. Her eyes were like stars in the night sky. She mouthed a few words. Goodbye, Meng Liang. Ye Qingzhou, the streamer is so bad and dangerous, but why am I so mesmerized by her smile? The matchstick that sells girls, critical hit. She emptied the baby's health bar in one hit. I've been watching the stream quietly. At first, I didn't have any feelings for the streamer until that smile. It felt like Cupid had stabbed his heart with a sword. All the cells in his body were screaming in excitement. He was completely mesmerized by the streamer. Mutual harm, although I have a boyfriend, at that moment, I wanted to be gay for her. Bai Gue Yeshing, what's the big deal about being gay for the streamer? I wanted to straighten it out for her, but her aura made my legs weak. Many fans in the streaming room wanted to stand up for Jiang Pengji. Inside the room, Meng Hun's heart was beating faster. The excitement of getting his revenge took over his senses, and it even brought out the violence in his heart. However, his rationality won out. No matter how much he hated Meng Liang, he couldn't do anything cruel. Wouldn't it be too easy to kill this little bastard just like that? Some people felt that they were at a disadvantage. Meng Liang had done so many things that had angered the heavens and the people. If he didn't suffer a little, he would be letting him off easy. Meng Hun said, just because he's a savage beast doesn't mean we have to use the same methods to teach him a lesson. Using violence to curb violence is indeed very satisfying, but we can't lose ourselves because of it. Furthermore, what's so satisfying about torturing someone who's about to die? Even if what Meng Hun said was bullshit*t, everyone would still think that it made sense, not to mention that what he said was quite reasonable. But I'm not willing to kill him just like that. I feel like something is missing in my heart. Meng Hun thought about it and said in a low voice, do you think that by torturing him, he will repent for what he's done? Meng Hun thought about it and said in a low voice, do you think that by torturing him, he will repent for what he's done? Meng Hun shook his head. Everyone knew Meng Liang's personality. He was stubborn and unrepentant. We won't torture him, but we won't give him a quick death. Since he's so afraid of death, we'll make a few small cuts on his wrists and let him have a taste of his own blood. After a long time, Meng Hun opened his mouth. His calm voice carried a hint of coldness. I want to see him breathe. By then, Jiang Pengji had already left the room. She wasn't in the mood to watch Meng Hun's revenge. Turning a person who was originally loyal and honest into a ruthless and malicious person was not a positive thing to see. Since the start of the semi-interactive streaming mission, the system had been playing dead. It didn't take the initiative to talk to Jiang Pengji. After all, they had almost fallen out with each other. However, the system was thick-skinned. It had only been a short while, but it took the initiative to talk to her. Host, I think, you're scary. Jiang Pengji snickered to herself. Scary? If it knew how scary she was, the system wouldn't have stepped on her bottom line and done things that she hated. He was just pretending to be confused. Fortunately, it was her. If it was an ordinary host, she didn't know what the system would do to her. Jiang Pengji's relaxed mood became a little heavier because of the system. Jiang Pengji didn't look up. Have you ever seen a bad guy who isn't scary? If you have, it only means that the bad guy isn't bad enough. She had sharp ears and eyes. Even though they were separated by 2 rooms, she could clearly hear Meng Liang's frightened whimpers. The next second, she heard Meng Hun say coldly, shut his mouth. Jiang Pengji leaned against a pillar lazily. System, finish the mission. As soon as she finished, the system executed it immediately. It seemed like it was trying to please Jiang Pengji. System, streamer Jiang Pengji's first semi-interactive streaming has ended perfectly. Dear viewers, are you satisfied? A. Satisfied, B. Average, C. Not satisfied. At that moment, Jiang Pengji was too lazy to say anything to entice the audience to vote. She could vote whatever they wanted. She was too lazy to serve them. But even though she was too lazy to serve them, there were many enthusiastic viewers in the streaming room who helped her get votes. It wasn't the first time they voted. Many experienced viewers expressed that they understood and gave a satisfied rating. Not only did they give a satisfied vote, but they also incessantly increased the number of votes on the streaming screen to get others to give a satisfied rating as well. In order to have a better stream, it was necessary to give a satisfied vote. Therefore, the final result was much better than the original plan. With a total of 10,000 votes, there were 9,235 satisfied votes, 622 average votes, and 143 dissatisfied votes. Although the satisfaction rate was high, it was lower than the first time by a few percentage points. More importantly, the satisfaction rate did not reach the standard of a gold chest. Regrettably, it was a silver chest. Jiang Pengji listened to the system's notification. She didn't ask Master Liaochen about her luck that day. She opened it. It was another card. But it wasn't a streamer's level-up card. It was a card with an alluring and sexy nude girl drawn on it. She had big breasts, a slender waist, and long legs. Her legs were slightly closed, and her arms were lazily folded in front of her chest. She seemed to be revealing, but not covering. Jiang Pengji was speechless. It seemed like the viewers in the streaming room couldn't see the card in her hand. Otherwise, they felt like their wisdom would be ruined. Chapter 177. XX Masterpiece, 9 Winding Corridors, Wonderful and Unpredictable. You deserve it. No man will be able to leave your charm. Men will be intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves from it. You will truly have a harem of 3,000 beauties and 3,000 dotes on you. From then on, the king will not attend morning court. Jiang Pengji, system, damn it. System. She suddenly smiled. Her smile was as bright as the morning sun, but the words she said were chilling. You'd better remember this. The system felt wronged. It was the scapegoat. Was it to be blamed for not getting a good card? However, according to the main plot of the palace intrigue system, this card did not disappoint Jiang Pengji's reputation as the lucky emperor. If it were the previous host, she would have to accumulate a huge amount of popularity points before she could redeem it from the system store. Jiang Pengji did not need to spend anything. She randomly drew a silver treasure chest and got the most valuable one. How was that not popular? However, the system did not dare to say this out loud. It was afraid of being scolded by Jiang Pengji. Was there any other system in the world that could live such a sullen life like it? The system followed Jiang Pengji's wishes and said, since the host doesn't like it, you can sell it to the system store. Jiang Pengji did not even bother to lift her eyelids. What she said made the system tremble in fear, but it was also secretly delighted. When did I say I didn't like it? She did not wait for the system to be happy. She continued, there are benefits to keeping it. Which man has enough rationality to control himself? There are only a few who can control themselves. The higher their position, the more unscrupulous they are, and the more conceited they are. She could imagine what those men who had multiple wives and concubines were thinking. If they liked women, they would pamper them. If they did not like them, they would be left aside for a period of time. They wouldn't hate each other, they would only scheme against each other. They would do their best to attract his attention and love. What was the purpose of the infighting in the backyard and the bloodshed? To monopolize the man's love? Or to obtain the husband's love? Then they would kill the unborn babies in the wombs of other women with a clear conscience. Their words were full of sarcasm and jealousy. Their faces were detestable. Or, was it just for the sake of wearing better clothes, eating better food, and being surrounded by servants and escorting him around? Jiang Pengji was disgusted by the abnormal atmosphere of that era. He was extremely disgusted and wanted to vomit every time he thought about it. What made her even more disgusted was that there was a system in her brain that constantly reminded her of this fact. What is palace intrigue? In essence, wasn't this a monkey show that was full of clowns fighting over the right to use a man's organs? Jiang Pengji's emotions were tumbling. On the other side, the system's heart slowly became active. The host's words meant, she's interested in palace fighting now? It said that a woman's appearance and figure were her natural weapons. To conquer a world, a woman only needed to conquer the man who conquered the world. Why was there a need to work so hard? Even if she was a strong woman, she still had the heart of a little woman. She looked forward to being protected, held in the palm of someone's hand, and praised to the heavens. I don't like that kind of man. To put it nicely, he's a man, but to put it bluntly, he's just a creature that's led by the nose by his body's desires. The reason why humans are intelligent creatures and can step out of the shackles of Earth and enter the interstellar stage is because they are rational and not driven by instinct like animals, Jiang Pengji said calmly as she played with the card with a somewhat shameful pattern in her hand. After hearing what she said, the system suddenly became emotional like a frosted eggplant. The corner of its mouth twitched as it said, according to your standards, it seems that there are no men or women in this world, only living creatures. Jiang Pengji sneered. You can't be so absolute. Don't kill everyone with one blow. Bad bamboo can still grow good bamboo shoots. The system snorted. You're so demanding. I feel that you won't be able to get married in this lifetime. As a palace intrigue system, why did it choose such a perversely demanding host? There was no solution. She replied casually, then I'll marry the one I think is the best. It's either the best or none. The system was confused. If that was the case, shouldn't Jiang Pengji hate the card in her hand? As if sensing its confusion, Jiang Pengji said, although it's quite disgusting, you have to admit that those who are dominated by instinct are indeed easier to deal with. This card is very evil, but if one day it was used on a woman with a peerless appearance, no man would be able to escape from the combination of appearance and figure. The land of gentleness is the grave of a hero. The power of seduction was great, and with the help of the card, its combat power was off the charts. The system was speechless. Jiang Pengji raised an eyebrow and said with contempt, do you think that I'll use it on myself? The system laughed awkwardly, not daring to answer directly. If it answered yes, it was sure that Jiang Pengji would spit it to death. The streaming room was closed. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and felt the peace that she hadn't felt in a long time. After some time, a strong smell of blood floated to her nose. She opened her eyes and happened to meet Meng Hun's gaze. He's dead? And you've avenged him? She asked. Meng Hun was sitting not far from her. His forehead was still covered in dust from kowtowing. He looked pale and haggard. Jiang Pengji asked again, what's the matter? Meng Hun hesitated, not knowing if he should speak. She saw through Meng Hun's thoughts and said, those people can only live well if you're alive because you're their backbone. Meng Liang is dead, and you've avenged him. What do you plan to do next? If you want to kill yourself and let me cut off your head to answer to the Mengs, don't. Suicide is the behavior of a coward. Meng Hun looked embarrassed. Jiang Pengji had already said what he wanted to say. What else could he say? I asked you before if you want to come to the Luz. What's your answer now? Jiang Pengji said, you just need to say yes or no. If you want, I'll take care of the rest for you. The Mengs will soon be too busy to take care of themselves. Meng Hun's thick lips moved. Hesitation and struggle flashed across his face. All in all, he and Jiang Pengji had only known each other for less than a day. But, he was indeed moved. Do you want to leave your name in history? Jiang Pengji asked Meng Hun while leaning against a pillar. She propped up her right leg and rested her wrist on her right knee. Meng Hun's eyes were wide open, and he seemed to be in a daze. What did he hear? Leave his name in history? Was she talking about him? Meng Hun felt as if he had heard something very important. His mind told him that he shouldn't continue listening, but his body was very honest. It was even a little eager. Chapter 178. There are countless nameless people in this world, but only a few people will be remembered by future generations. Some people lived in obscurity, and only 2 or 3 generations of descendants remembered them after they died. When these descendants also turned to dust, who would remember their names? But some people, even if they have been dead for hundreds or thousands of years, still live in the memory of others. That is the real immortality. To put it simply, it was like living in vain if one did not do something big in one's life. Yes, Jiang Pengji was recruiting people to her side to prepare for her big plan. Meng Han listened to Jiang Pengji's words and had a strange and palpitating feeling. He felt his mouth was dry, and after a long time, he said bitterly, Lang Jun, what do you mean? Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled. Instead of hiding your identity and living in seclusion in the wilderness, why don't you follow me? Meng Han was shocked. His eyes were full of shock and embarrassment, and he was eager to try. But aren't you afraid that the Mengs will come to you? Meng Han felt that he needed to calm his restless heart. It was too dangerous. Didn't I say? If you want, I will take care of the rest for you. The Mengs are just grasshoppers after autumn. How long can they jump around? History is just a piece of white paper written by the winner. If you want, you can make them infamous for thousands of years. Jiang Pengji's voice seemed to have the power to bewitch people, and she was luring Meng Han into the trap bit by bit. How much praise you will receive in the future will be how much they will be criticized. Don't you think that the blueprint is too tempting? Indeed, very tempting. Meng Han's breath was slightly heavy, and he could not help but swallow. The scene in front of him seemed to be shrouded by the future she spoke of. But even so, Meng Han's reason still prevailed. Why would Lang Jun have such a rebellious thought? Jiang Pengji sneered and said in a strange voice, rebellious? Meng Han slowly regained his reason, and he wanted to suppress the throbbing in his heart so that he could not even defend the basic line of defense. Don't you think your idea is rebellious? She shook her head and asked with a smile, do you think my idea is rebellious to the royal family of Dongqing, or to the Mengs in Sangzhou? Look at the court today, when has it ever been clean? Look at the people today, when did they ever have enough to eat? Meng Han, touch your heart and tell me, were you loyal to the royal family of Dongqing or the Meng family of Sangzhou? Every question was like a brick hitting Meng Han's heart, making him unable to speak. You don't have to answer me. Everything is clear from the moment you still call me Lang Jun instead of a rebel. Meng Han suddenly felt powerless. He didn't even dare to face Jiang Pengji's gaze. Meng Pengji were all right. Let's not talk about this. Jiang Pengji snorted through her nose. She listened to the mockery. Based on the current situation, how long do you think this illusion of peace can be maintained? Didn't your old boss, the Meng family, already cause the people of Sangzhou to be filled with resentment and a military disaster? She said leisurely, let's not talk about the internal problems, and just talking about the external problems, Dongqing is also in imminent danger. If so, everyone in the world has the right to fight for it. Why can't I? The founder of the Xia dynasty once said that he was the emperor's mandate. If so, why couldn't his descendants protect the country? Why did so many people rebel against the Xia dynasty? Is this the so-called emperor's mandate? I don't believe it. Meng Han's eyes flashed with panic and anxiety as he listened to her. Be careful, Lang Jun. The walls have ears, Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue and said, don't worry. The only people who can hear these words are you and me. No matter how good the walls have ears, they can't hide from me. Otherwise, why would I be here telling you these things? Do I look like a careless person? She was arrogant, but she was not stupid. Did she think that she was as brainless as Meng Liang? She only dared to say that because she had someone to rely on. Meng Han was completely convinced, but he still had a doubt in his heart. Even though he knew that if he asked, he would be looking for trouble. Lang Jun, you trust me so much. Have you ever thought about what would happen if I didn't mean what you said? Meng Han knew that he was looking for trouble. After all, no matter how he answered the question, it would not be right. Jiang Pengji glanced at Meng Han and asked, are you saying that your willingness to commit suicide for your brother was just an act? Of course not. So I'm not worried, Jiang Pengji looked down and said casually, if I'm wrong about you, then I'm blind. Thus, Meng Han got on Jiang Pengji's boat without knowing why. If I'm blind, I'll get rid of you, she added with a smile. Meng Han was speechless. Wait, why did it feel like something was wrong with Lang Jun? Before Meng Han could think about it, Jiang Pengji had already changed the topic. This is the Lu Manor. There's an ice cellar here. You can store Meng Liang's body there to prevent maggots from rotting. Jiang Pengji didn't need to look to know how Meng Liang died. He was bleeding to death, and he must have suffered a great shock before dying. What an unlucky child. If there was reincarnation in this world, he had to be careful before reincarnating. He didn't want to fall into her hands again. Well, no need to burn it. Scatter the ashes anywhere. It seemed like a waste to store Meng Liang's body in an ice cellar. How can I do that? Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh. She said in a sinister tone, it's hard enough for him to bury his son. If he knew that his son's ashes were scattered everywhere, or his body was rotting with maggots, wouldn't that be too cruel? Meng Hun was speechless. Was it not cruel to keep his son's body and then send it over? He felt that he was overthinking. Jiang Pengji not only had a kind side to her, but she also had a cruel side to her. But it was no wonder. Otherwise, why would a pure kind-hearted person say something so shocking? The blood has to be cleaned up. The weather is getting warmer. If we don't clean it up, it will smell bad and attract mosquitoes and flies. Jiang Pengji said, you and your subordinates should temporarily drop your old names and disguise yourselves. I'll arrange for you to go to the farm to lie low for a while. Farm? Meng Hun smiled and asked, is it the farm from before? Chapter 179. Exterminate the bandits? Meng Hun found it hard to believe. Even the government didn't bother to send troops to deal with the bandits, which made them a scourge. He didn't expect his Lang Jun would want to do that, but where would she get the manpower? Yes, but you don't have to worry. Since I dared to use the few people I have to deal with this matter, I naturally have absolute confidence. Jiang Pengji was not stupid. If she was not careful, she would lose her life. She might even lose all the people in her hands. Since she dared to do it, she naturally had 100% confidence. To put it bluntly, she was very calculative and would not do a losing business. Meng Hun didn't understand what kind of trump card his Lang Jun had. How could she be so confident that she dared to confront the bandits? However, he soon found out why. Jiang Pengji took out a piece of bamboo paper that was folded into the size of a palm and handed it to him. Unfold it and you'll know why I dare to do it. Meng Hun did as he was told. He turned the bamboo paper over and finally found the right angle. Then, as the former commandant of the Meng family, he was so shocked that he almost threw away the bamboo paper in his hand. However, he was still rational and restrained himself. He carefully folded the bamboo paper according to its original shape. That cautious and considerate look was as if he was handling a precious treasure. Although it was just a drawing, it was priceless to Meng Hun. This drawing. Meng Hun was a warrior without much education, but he was literate and had read some books. He had been the commandant of the county for so many years, so his eyes and knowledge were far better than those of ordinary warriors. At first, he didn't understand what the picture was. However, when he carefully read the small annotations, a huge idea suddenly arose in his mind. His heart trembled. At the same time, he felt deeply that Jiang Pengji trusted him. He felt more and more at ease. He was no longer the commandant of Meng County. Life was full of ups and downs, and he was at the lowest point of his life. He even wanted to die. But as a man, who didn't want to make a name for himself and leave his name in history? Jiang Pengji's words hit the soft spot in Meng Hun's heart. He didn't have the loftiness of the others. He didn't feel that it was a waste of talent for him to go from a commandant to a young child subordinate. Jiang Pengji bet that he could be trusted. Wasn't he also betting that she could be loyal to him? He was broad-minded and full of lofty sentiments. Based on this alone, even if he had no power or influence, he was still 1,000,000 times better than some nobles. Who could be sure that this unknown kid wouldn't become famous in the 9 states in the future? Meng Hun's mind was completely focused on the drawing Jiang Pengji had given him. It was the crossbow drawing he had shown Su Ke before. Even Su Ke, who didn't know much about it, could see its value. How could Meng Hun, a professional martial artist, not see it? This thing has already been made? He tried hard to suppress his excited voice, so as not to embarrass himself. Jiang Pengji shook her head regretfully and said, "Currently, the craftsmen are still rushing to make the crossbow. Although the crossbow is feasible, the wood required is relatively delicate. If it's not tough enough, it won't be able to unleash its original power, and the shooting range won't be as far as expected." Meng Hun felt a little regretful, but he wasn't too disappointed. This crossbow is half the size of a normal bow, and it's light and portable. It's very suitable for rapid combat. After Meng Hun understood the contents of the drawing, he was excited. He also understood why Jiang Pengji was so confident in suppressing the bandits. Training a soldier into a sharpshooter with 100% accuracy not only required a lot of time and energy, but it also had high requirements for the trainee. Eyesight, arm strength, and the ability to judge the surrounding environment were all indispensable. If the painstakingly trained soldier was injured on the battlefield, resulting in a problem with his arm or vision, the soldier would basically be useless. Naturally, it meant that the cost of training the soldier would be wasted. However, if the crossbows described in the blueprints were made, even the most ordinary soldiers would only need a little bit of training. It wouldn't take much effort, manpower, or cost to train them into existences comparable to godly archers. Even if they were slightly inferior, they wouldn't be too bad. Moreover, how many sharpshooters were there today who could shoot with such accuracy? As long as they had the crossbows, they could quickly train as many soldiers who were good at shooting as the craftsmen could make them. Because it was light and easy to carry, they could carry it on their back. They could carry a few days' worth of food and enough arrows to travel through the dense forest. Those bandits would have been shot full of holes by the crossbow before they could even get close to them. It was no wonder that his Lang Jun was so confident. If it were someone else, they would have to pay a huge price to eliminate the bandits. However, there was one thing that Meng Hun didn't quite understand. Even the government didn't care about the bandits. It could even be said that they didn't have the energy to deal with them. Why did his Lang Jun want to do that? Faced with this question, Jiang Pengji thought about it and said to him, "If I'm lying, I'll tell you that I'm a living bodhisattva. It's my duty to punish the evil. But if I'm telling the truth, it's definitely not like that." Meng Hun was speechless. The truth is, you need money to recruit soldiers and buy horses. I'm so poor that I don't even have money in my pocket. How can I afford to buy young strong men? Jiang Pengji snorted. Meng Hun looked calm on the surface, but there was an indescribable subtle feeling in his heart. She continued, "Most of the bandits are young people who can't make a living anymore. Although there are some problems with them, we can't say that all of them are undesirable. If we choose carefully, we can still pick out some good seedlings." Meng Hun was speechless. He believed that reason. Jiang Pengji's joking expression suddenly turned serious. "As for the other reason, it's what I've told you before. If we let the bandits gather and their power grow, I'm afraid that they will be restless when the news of the chaos in Meng County in Sang Prefecture reaches here. Instead of waiting to face the bandits that are like locusts, it's better to seize the opportunity to divide them and break the relationship between the bandits." Meng Hun looked serious and said, "Lang Jun, you're farsighted." Jiang Pengji added, "But it's true that I don't have money." Meng Hun was speechless. Why did he feel like he had boarded a pirate ship? He secretly scratched his head. Some doubts flashed across the serious face of the county military chief, but he quickly suppressed them. He had just joined his new master and needed to do something to prove himself. How could he have such a big misunderstanding about his Lang Jun? Chapter 180. Jiang Pengji was more concerned about the fact that they were the first members of the Lu family. She even personally came out to protect Meng Hun and his men. For the sake of caution, these people were all servants that the Lu family had just bought. Their birthplaces and origins could all be checked. However, Jiang Pengji seemed to be thinking too much. It was impossible for the guards at the gate to inspect the carriages of the Lu family. Only a greenhorn who had just taken up his post and did not know anything would carefully inspect the carriages of the nobles. If they met someone with a good temper, they might praise them for abiding by their duties and strictly enforcing the law. But if they met someone with a bad temper and disdain for the common people, anyone who dared to inspect the carriages and delay the nobles' time would definitely be taught a lesson. So when the guards saw the emblem of the Lu family on the carriages, they all put on flattering smiles and let them pass without further inspection. These guards were experienced guards of the city gates. They could recognize even the most inconspicuous emblem of a poor family in Hejin County. Not to mention, the Lu family's current status was not bad. With Lu Shi, the county chief in the court, no one dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Jiang Pengji was happy to see them make things easier for them. Of course, she wouldn't say anything. Jiang Pengji didn't try to curry favor with them. She just said in a casual tone, "I've already sent people to prepare enough clothes and food. It should be enough for you to recuperate for a while. I don't think you can complain about the quality of life after chasing after Meng Liang these past few days." Meng Han didn't think that his previous life was unbearable. He deserved the care of his new master. But when he thought of his brothers who helped him escape from the Meng family's army, he couldn't help but feel a little depressed. They didn't die on the spot. They didn't get the proper care after they were injured. Their condition worsened and they died of illness. He brought his brothers out of Meng County, but he couldn't even let them return to their homeland. He could only bury them in the wilderness. "I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if you can agree to it." Meng Han cupped his hands in front of his chest. He was very serious. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and said, "If you have something to say, just say it. You don't have to worry about this or that. I'm not the kind of person who has too many taboos. I won't blame you for this. Just tell me." Meng Han felt warm in his heart and said with some embarrassment, "In addition to the brothers I brought out, there are 3 others hiding in the mountains." "Are the injuries serious?" Meng Han said, "Before, with the thing you gave me, my illness was slightly suppressed. But my body is still very weak, so I can't move. Since that's the case, wait until you've settled down at the farm, then go to the mountain to receive them. There are many ferocious beasts in the forest. It's too dangerous for the 3 of you to stay there. You're being careless." Jiang Pengji's words warmed Meng Han's heart. Meng Han's face was full of shame. He didn't agree either and insisted on leaving one person to take care of the wounded. However, his brothers were stubborn and refused no matter what he said. How could Meng Han dare to disappoint such sincere feelings? Only by killing their enemies with their own hands and taking revenge would they be able to get back at them. "Thank you for your understanding, Lang Jun." Jiang Pengji didn't say anything. After all, to her, it was as easy as lifting a finger, but to Meng Han, it was life-saving. "The training of the farm is currently in Xiaoyu's hands, but after you go there, I'll hand it over to you." When Meng Han heard that, he was at a loss. He was a little flattered, but also a little uneasy. Although he didn't know who Xiaoyu was, he knew the principle of first come, first served. If he went there and asked Xiaoyu to let go of his work, that didn't seem right. Although Meng Han was a martial artist, he also knew the ways of the world. Jiang Pengji saw his uneasiness and said, "Don't think too much. We are short of people, so we use Xiaoyu as 2 people." Meng Han was speechless. Suddenly, he felt pity for Xiaoyu. What should he do? Did he know that he was being exploited by Lang Jun? Suddenly, a blurry figure appeared in Meng Han's mind. It was the figure of him working diligently under Lang Jun's whip. If he knew you were going to take over, he would be happy. After all, it's not something he's good at. If he wants to do well, he needs to spend more energy and time. Jiang Pengji leaned against the table. Meng Han was in the same car as her, and the others were in another rented car. And, to be honest, you have actually met him before. Don't be too nervous. Xiao Yu is easy to get along with. Met him before? Meng Han asked. He tried hard to recall the relevant memory, but he couldn't find it. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, that day, he was the one with a white cloth wrapped around his face, sitting by the river and fishing. Meng Han vaguely had an impression of him. He seemed to be a young boy. Anyway, they had met before. Meng Han's nervousness gradually faded. He thought to himself, why should I worry about a young boy? However, Meng Han would soon regret his thoughts. He was indeed a young boy, but he was in charge of finances and internal affairs. Su Ku could decide everyone's quality of life, but Meng Han was clumsy with words. How could he be Su Ku's opponent? Soon, the farm was close at hand. Meng Han sighed in his heart. He didn't expect to come here for the second time with such an identity. When they arrived, Su Ku was still diligently supervising the training of the servants, or rather, the troops. They didn't know if it was because Jiang Pengji had trained him before, but his appearance and mental state were much better than before. Hearing that his Lang Jun was here, Su Ku quickly stopped what he was doing and slightly tidied up his appearance. However, when he saw the strong man standing behind Jiang Pengji, Su Ku's polite smile froze on his face. This guy. Why is he here again? Xiao Yu, come and meet me. Jiang Pengji smiled at Su Ku and said, this is the new chief coach. His surname is Meng. Su Ku was speechless. How did they hook up in such a short time? Why didn't he know anything about it? He felt like he was still dreaming. The bullet screen was full of doubts, but Su Ku politely greeted Meng Han. Seeing Su Ku greet him, Meng Han subconsciously saluted him. Jiang Pengji was very satisfied with one of them. One was civil, one was military, one was internal, and the other was external. Since Coach Meng is here, I'll leave the training to him. As for the details, I'll talk to Coach Meng later. Before Jiang Pengji said anything, Su Ku already wanted to shake his hand. Meng Han didn't expect her to shake his hand so quickly. He looked a little embarrassed. Jiang Pengji said to Su Ku impatiently, Coach Meng just arrived, and you can't wait to shake my hand. It's as if I mistreated you before. Chapter 181. Su Ku was very clear about his own ability. A person's energy was limited, and he couldn't do everything. Even if he could, it would take an unimaginable amount of time and energy. Compared to the final result, the investment was too high, and the loss outweighed the gain. Now that Meng Han was here, it meant that he could get rid of the complicated things and have more time to study. Although the Lus were not the top aristocratic family, they had a rich collection of books. Su Ku couldn't imagine how many books there were. In the past, he loved a book like it was a treasure, and he would read it over and over again. Now, he had a whole treasure house, but he had to spend so much energy on something he was not good at. How could he not feel sad? Now that Meng Han had taken over some of the things, Su Ku couldn't be happier. Naturally, he didn't care about his Lungjuan's teasing. But Su Ku still had some doubts. When did his Langjun take over Meng Han? Although he knew that Meng Han was good at deceiving people, Meng Han had seen the world. Why was he so easy to trick? While Meng Han went to help his men settle down, Jiang Pengji tilted her head and glanced at Su Ku. Why are you looking at me like I'm a human trafficker? Su Ku sighed. Lungjuan's ability to persuade people is incomparable to those human traffickers. How long has it been, and Captain Meng Han has been subdued by you so easily? Really, speed is of the essence in war. It was so fast that I didn't even have time to react. As an accountant, he also needed time to make arrangements. As the general coach, Meng Han's living quarters had to be spacious. Even though it couldn't be very nice, it still had to be clean and tidy. The previous batch of servants had been divided into several groups, and they were familiar with each other. Now that Meng Hun's subordinates had suddenly appeared, what if they didn't handle it well and the troops became hostile? Not to mention, Su Ke had to send someone to prepare bedding and clothes for them. Dinner should also be prepared for the people who had appeared out of nowhere. She came so suddenly and without any prior notice, he suddenly had the illusion that he was the housekeeper of the house. Speaking of which accountant would take care of so many messy trifles? Jiang Pengji's mouth twitched. Su Ke sounded as if she had done something to Meng Hun. This is probably fate. Just like how I met Xiaoyu, I should also meet Meng Hun. This time, it was Su Ke's turn to be silent. Even though a long time had passed, he still hadn't forgotten the details of that day. Su Ke looked at Jiang Pengji speechlessly and whispered to her, "Since Coach Meng has surrendered, does that mean Meng Liang?" "Yes, I've received the letter." Jiang Pengji suddenly raised her lips. That Meng Liang. Luckily he had sharp eyes when he was reincarnated. Otherwise, with that brain of his, I don't know if he could live to grow up. His IQ was touching. Meng Liang's parents must have worked hard to give birth to a son with such a low IQ and raise him into such a useless person. Su Ke asked, "How much food did you ask for?" "About 500 stones. Meng Liang filled it in himself, but I think it's too little." "How many people can eat it?" Jiang Pengji snorted. She wasn't a beggar. She was looking down on her by asking for a few hundred dawn of food. Su Ke also said, 500 dawn is indeed too little. Since the Mengs don't lack food, we'll just ask for 2,000 dawn. Not to mention, the transportation team from Meng County to Hejin County will consume a huge amount of rice. While they were talking, they had increased the original price of 500 dawn of rice to 2,000 dawn. They were so arrogant that they deserved a beating. But, how do you plan to deliver this letter to the Mengs? Su Ke picked up a brush and wrote a blackmailing letter with his left hand, which he wasn't used to using. The letter stated that Meng Liang was in his hands and that if they wanted to ransom him, they had to follow the letter. They would exchange rice for Meng Hun and would not accept bribes. They had to deliver the rice within X days after receiving the letter. Of course, Meng Hun was the kidnapper. Since he had already broken up with his old boss, it was okay to break up with him even more. Jiang Pengji heard that and chuckled. She said, "What's so difficult about this question? We don't have to send someone to deliver the letter all the way to the Mengs in Meng County. We just need to put the letter in the woodshed in the gambling house." Su Ke almost dropped the brush with his left hand. How could his Lang Jun be so capable? She knew everything. He felt that his brain was a little redundant and he was unhappy. How can you be so sure? Meng Liang came to Hejin County after getting rid of his entourage. In other words, it's very likely that the entourage took a detour when looking for Meng Liang. When they received the news that Meng Liang was locked up in the gambling house, it was highly likely that they would arrive 1 or 2 days later. More importantly, I didn't see any traces of Meng Liang's entourage last night. I'm guessing that they will arrive today or tomorrow at the latest. It didn't matter if Meng Liang was late by 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days. What mattered was that when those retinues arrived in Hejin County, they would definitely go to the woodshed in the gambling house to search for Meng Liang. In this way, they would naturally see 2 obvious bamboo slips. If the entourage knew that Meng Liang was dead, they would be afraid of the Mengs pursuing the matter. Naturally, they wouldn't dare to send the letter back. Maybe they would scatter and run for their lives. But what if they weren't sure whether Meng Liang was dead or not? Then the result would be completely different. Jiang Pengji continued leisurely, when they see the blackmail letter, they will think that the kidnappers have something to gain from it. Before their greed is satisfied, Meng Liang is still alive. In that case, they will definitely try their best to send the 2 letters back to Meng County in Sang Prefecture as soon as possible so that Meng Liang won't be delayed and suffer. After they rescue Meng Liang, they might be able to make a great contribution. Meng Liang's death and his life were completely different. If he was dead, the Mengs wouldn't care if Meng Liang got rid of the entourage on his own. They would definitely make the entourage pay. If he was alive, even if the Mengs would punish the entourage for failing to watch over Meng Liang, they would still compensate the entourage double for Meng Liang's actions. To put it bluntly, Jiang Pengji was scheming that the entourage would risk their lives to send the 2 letters safely to the Mengs. Su Ku was speechless. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh when she saw his hopeless expression. I know why you're asking for so many details. You're expecting me to ask you questions and then you'll tell me the same thing, aren't you? Chapter 182. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and smiled. Then. I'll try to be more careful next time. Su Ku wanted to laugh. He had never felt so tired before. Lang Jun was sometimes too smart. She was not happy being a subordinate because there was no sense of accomplishment. She was redundant. By the way, I asked the housekeeper to look into it. I heard that Xiaoyu has a widowed aunt. Is that true? Su Ku was startled by her sudden question. He answered, there is indeed an aunt. Why do you ask? I'm just asking. I can't not know who my subordinates have. Su Ku was suspicious. According to his understanding of his Lang Jun, she never liked to waste time and energy. But he had something to say when it came to his aunt. I see. Thank you for your concern. She has been a widow for many years. Her son died young. She lives alone and is quite poor. She occasionally sews or washes clothes for people to make a living. She helped me with my mother's funeral. When I was in prison, she was the only one who secretly sent me dry food and cakes. Originally, I wanted to wait for things to settle down before returning to my hometown to bring her here to spend the rest of her life. Since you mentioned it, I have a presumptuous request. It was the second time Jiang Pengji had heard the word presumptuous request that day. She could just say it directly. Your aunt is good to you. You should be filial to her. There is nothing that can't be said. I will send someone to Zisong County to pick her up. The road will be in the wilderness. I don't trust you to travel alone. Don't worry about it. Just focus on your work. Jiang Pengji could not help but reflect. Did she look like such an unreasonable person? If she did not mention it, Su Ku would probably hold it in for another month or 2 before asking. Su Ku did not know what she was thinking, but he was touched by Jiang Pengji's arrangement. After all, he was already a slave. His Lang Jun did not even need to be polite to him. It was reasonable for her to order him around. These days, he did not even feel the slightest sense of inferiority or uneasiness of being a slave. Not only did he not feel that way, but he also forgot about it. It was only when he had to change the dressing for the tattoo on his face that he felt his heart bleed. The pain numbed him, and he had no choice but to face this embarrassing fact. His encounter with his Lang Jun was not a pleasant one, but he had to admit that he was impressed by him after spending so much time with him. A gentleman would die for his bosom friend. Perhaps, the young man in front of him, who was not even as tall as him, was the wise master he had been waiting for all his life. The next time you return to the manor, go and get a few months' salary in advance. Since we've brought the old lady here to enjoy her life, we can't let her work hard for a living. You're a young man, so you should treat it as a form of training for yourself. However, the elderly still need to take good care of themselves. From Jiang Pengji's point of view, the frail elderly and children belong to the vulnerable and protected groups. Su Ku did not hesitate this time. Instead, he accepted her kindness generously. A penny stumps a hero. Su Ku, who was good at internal affairs, understood this very well. That was why he didn't decline pretentiously, because there was no need to. He didn't have any savings and he had to rely on the Lu residence. Even if he brought his aunt over, he wouldn't be able to take good care of her. That was one of the reasons why Su Ku was worried. Fortunately, his Lang Jun was considerate and understood his difficulties. If he didn't accept it, he would be crazy. Suku felt relieved, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from his heart. But soon, he noticed that Jiang Pengji's eyes revealed a perplexed look, as if she was troubled by a difficult problem. Suku thought to himself, what kind of problem can make this young Langjun so perplexed? He felt that he couldn't miss this opportunity. If she had any problems, he would definitely solve them. Don't think about that problem, let him do it. Langjun, you look perplexed. What's troubling you? Suku asked softly. Jiang Pengji glanced at him and said, I'm thinking about a problem, and I seem to have an answer. What problem? Even the smart and quick-witted Langjun can't figure it out? Suku felt that it was time for him to show off his skills. Let me give you an example. Jiang Pengji pointed at Suku. He looked confused. She said, my original plan was that you worked hard and should be rewarded. But after my father reminded me, I realized that you would enjoy it more if you cared more about your family. The reward is the same, but obviously, you prefer the latter. This time, Suku was completely dumbfounded. He wanted to show his talent. After all, even his Langjun couldn't solve it. If he could solve it, he would be more valued. But when she asked the question, he was speechless. He didn't know how to answer. He thought that she was making fun of him, but when he looked at her expression carefully, he realized that she really didn't understand. Suddenly, Suku didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. If he knew that there was a word called cute in the world, he would know how he felt just now. His Langjun had a strange sense of cuteness. According to Ku, this can't be generalized. It varies from person to person. Suku wasn't that harsh to Jiang Pengji. After all, she was just a 12-year-old boy. The ways of the world required not only talent but also experience. If she didn't understand, she could teach or learn. It varies from person to person. Yes. For example, Coach Meng. The thing you asked me to prepare is what he needs now. It's what he needs. Even if it's not expensive, it's enough. As for Auntie, I've always wanted to bring Auntie over, but I've been short of money and I don't have any foundation to stand on. I don't even have the slightest idea on how to bring Auntie over safely. But your actions have solved this problem. Suku said seriously, to you, it's just a small effort, but to others, it's different. Isn't it a great favor to solve a difficult problem that they have no solution to? Langjun said it yourself. It's not about the weight of the gift, it's about the intention. The two are the same. However, a boss bribing and pacifying his subordinates, closing the distance between them, and deepening their relationship. This was originally a beautiful and hazy thing. But his Langjun style was different. She asked him directly, and he was the person involved. To be honest, it was a little awkward. Suku felt like he had nothing left to live for. Jiang Pengji was not stupid. She understood immediately that she had fallen into the wrong path. She focused on the culture of this era and the so-called bloodline, but she ignored the simplest core. I understand. I was in a dead end. Jiang Pengji nodded seriously. Chapter 183. Jiang Pengji felt as if she had cleared the fog and walked out of a dead end. Many things became clear to her. Of course, there was a huge difference between the two eras, but people's hearts were always the same. She had been stuck in a dead end. While she was thinking, Suku suddenly smiled and dared to tease her. It's rare that there are things that you don't know. Jiang Pengji didn't feel offended at all. After all, no one was perfect. She had many flaws, so there was nothing to deny. No one is omniscient and omnipotent. I don't understand these things, and I might even be wrong about them. Isn't that normal? Jiang Pengji looked at Suku with clear eyes and said, let me give you another example. Don't you always study hard just to learn what you don't know? Suku almost choked on his own saliva. How could that be the same? If it weren't for his Langjuan's strong and dazzling performance, as if she was an omniscient and omnipotent person, he wouldn't have teased her like that. However, Jiang Pengji clearly recognized her shortcomings and didn't mind being teased by others. She was rare, and that was her biggest advantage. Didn't you see how the most famous prime minister, the teacher of the previous dynasty, was killed by the Gaozong? The prime minister of the previous dynasty just fulfilled his duty and was cruelly killed by the Gaozong's only son. The higher one's position was, the more they couldn't tolerate others looking at their shortcomings. Some people thought it was honest advice, while others thought it was unpleasant to the ear. But no matter which one it was, it varied from person to person. If the lord they served was broad-minded and could accept good advice, of course, they would listen to their subordinates' advice and correct their mistakes. However, if the lord they served was narrow-minded and couldn't bear to hear even half a bad word, even if they didn't flare up on the spot, they would still be harshly remembered by others behind their backs, causing people to feel uneasy. How many loyal subjects and generals would follow such a lord to the death? Therefore, Su Ku was moved by Jiang Pengji's ability to admit that she had her shortcomings so easily. Su Ku was secretly touched, but Jiang Pengji couldn't touch his cute point at all. At that moment, Meng Han had already settled the rest of his brothers. His face was full of joy. He went to take a look. It was a dry and tidy shared bed. Every bedding was good and warm. He didn't feel the slightest bit cold. Meng Han was very satisfied with this treatment. There weren't many tenant farmers in the farm, so most of the rooms were empty. Occasionally, they would store some things, tidy up a little, and smoke out the humidity in the room. Basically, it was ready for people to live in. Su Ku had considered the situation of adding more people to the troop, so he had prepared an extra room, which was just in time to be put to use. As for Meng Han, his residence had already been arranged by the farm's maidservant, so he should have a place to stay at night. Thank you, Lang Jun. Meng Han bowed to Jiang Pengji as soon as he arrived, but she stopped him before he could kneel down. That's how it should be. Since you've chosen me, I'll at least guarantee you the most basic necessities. Jiang Pengji said calmly and gestured for Meng Han to sit down. You can ask Xiaoyu about the handover of the troops. I will come to the farm occasionally. If there's any shortage, just let me know. In a few days, the situation will be more tense. Remember to be careful. Meng Han understood what Jiang Pengji meant. If the Mengs knew that Meng Liang had been kidnapped, they would be furious. By the way, after I go back, I will send my personal maid to you, Jiang Pengji suddenly said. Su Ku, who was enjoying his tea, almost choked when he heard what Jiang Pengji said. Meng Han didn't know what to do. His face turned red and white, and he stuttered, Lang Jun, I appreciate your kindness. But my late wife's mourning period is not over yet, so I really can't accept you. Plus, I don't want to remarry. Jiang Pengji was confused. She looked at Meng Han and then at Su Ku. Then she raised her eyebrows and complained, Why are you so dirty? What kind of dirty things are you thinking about? The two of them didn't understand what dirty was. Su Ku, who was conveniently insulted by Jiang Pengji, also felt wronged. What was wrong with him? Before they could say anything, Jiang Pengji explained, My maid is here to practice martial arts. What else are you thinking? Meng Han and Su Ku were stunned, and then they quietly lowered their heads. Su Ku was fine. He knew that his Lang Jun was not a decent person. But Meng Han reflected on himself. He had forgotten that his Lang Jun was only 12. According to the rules of the aristocratic families, he didn't even have a room. Meng Han was a special case of sleeping with women at the age of 11. He couldn't be compared to the other noble sons of the aristocratic families. He thought that his little Lang Jun probably didn't know how misleading his words were. There was a subtle awkwardness between the two of them. Meng Han coughed awkwardly. He couldn't say that he misunderstood that his Lang Jun wanted to give him his maid. But, that didn't make sense. Why would he send his maid to the farm to practice martial arts with the troops? Jiang Pengji had her own plans. She didn't have much time to teach Nongqin. Or rather, she didn't have the patience to teach. She could let Nongqin learn some basic physical training from the troops. Meng Han was a reliable person. With him watching over her, Nongqin wouldn't be taken advantage of. Jiang Pengji would give Nongqin special training from time to time. Soon, she would be able to beat those weak warriors in the troops. Whoever wanted to take advantage of her had to be prepared to be kicked in the balls. My maid likes knives, spears, swords, and halberds. It's too boring to be trapped in the inner house all day. I think it's good for her to practice martial arts if she likes it. She won't be bullied by her husband when she gets married, Jiang Pengji said seriously. What do you think? Meng Han and Su Ku were confused. What could they say? Lang Jun cared about his maidservant and was afraid that she would be bullied when she got married. A normal person would ask someone to instill the correct concept of being a good wife and educating children for the maidservant and let her study women's morality and needlework instead of asking her to practice martial arts. What was he thinking? If there was a conflict in the family, he could solve it with his fists. Su Ku looked like he had opened a door to a new world. Meng Han said, Lang Juan's idea is great. He was also a man with a daughter who was brutally murdered. If she could grow up safely, it would be time for him to get married in a few years. As a father, of course, he couldn't bear to see his daughter being bullied. So, even though Lang Juan's idea was a bit strange, he still supported it. Su Ku looked at Meng Han in shock. He felt like he had been rejected by the two. But Su Ku twisted his body uneasily and said, this is not a good idea. After all, the troops are all men. What should we do if the reputation of Lang Juan's maid is ruined? Jiang Pengji didn't say anything. Meng Han said with a stern face, in the previous dynasty, there were also female generals. Why can't women practice martial arts? Su Ku was speechless. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.